2021 City Council meeting. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Treaty 4 territory, a treaty signed with 35 First Nations across southern Saskatchewan, parts of Alberta and Manitoba, and the original lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. To ensure social distancing measures are being met during this time, members of council and some members of city administration are attending the meeting today through video conferencing. Please ensure your video camera and microphone are turned off. If a member of council wishes to speak, they enter the name in the chat window in order to be placed in the speaking queue. When speaking, please remember to unmute your microphone and enable your video camera. All votes will be conducted with a recorded vote. Delegations will be attending the meeting today through teleconferencing to address council on various items on the agenda. Can I have someone move a motion to approve the agenda at the call of the chair with the addition of public notice bylaws 2021-29 to 2021-33 and a communication of CP 21-23 that were tabled from April 29 to 2021 City Council meeting to be considered at this meeting?
Zakidniak.
Thank you, Councillor Zakidniak. Can I have a seconder?
Hawkins.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Carried. Can I have someone move a motion to approve the meeting minutes from City Council meetings held on April 12th and April 14th, 2021?
Hawkins.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Can I have a seconder?
Stadnichuk.
Thank you, Councillor Stadnichuk. Any error or omissions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Carried. Tabled public notice bylaws and communications. We have a communication on bylaw number 2021-30, the development application free amendment bylaw from Jackie Schmidt representing Heritage Regina. Can I have someone move a motion to receive and file communication CP 21-13?
Zakidniak.
Thank you, Councillor Zakidniak. Can I ask for a seconder?
Hawkins.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Carried. We'll now consider the table bylaws from the April 28th meeting, and I'll turn it over to the Deputy Mayor Hawkins to do first reading for the following bylaws that require public notice and or public hearing. Bylaws number 2021-29, 2021-30, 2021-31, 2021-32, and 2021-33.
Thank you. I move, seconded by Councillor Bresciani, that bylaws 2021-29, -30, -31, -32, and -33, just -32 be introduced and read a first time.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Can I have someone, Councillor Bresciani is not on the call right now due to some technical difficulties. Can I have someone else second?
No, I'm here.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Then we're good.
I just, Mayor, there's a typo here in my script. So that should be, as I initially read it, that bylaws 2021-29, 30, 31, 32, and 33 be introduced and read a first time. I'm wondering if Councillor Bresciani will agree to that.
Yes, I'm in favor of that.
Great. And Mayor, the clerk will speak to it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. As mentioned, Council is now considering these bylaws which require this public hearing. Number 2129, to facilitate runway expansion, aviation, and navigation needs of the Regina International Airport. 2130, to include a fee based on cost recovery of third-party review costs incurred in relation to heritage property applications. 2131, to improve clarity in regulations and to remove unnecessary barriers to development within industrial and mixed-use zones. 2132, to authorize the exchange of municipal reserve lands located at 3215 Lakeview Avenue for lands located at 3301 Garnett Street. And 2133, to rezone the subject lands to accommodate a new joint-use school and related parking. As these are public hearings, Madam Mayor, but owing to the pandemic, interested parties were required to submit interest in addressing council on these matters, and there were none received.
Thank you. Any opposed to the first readings? Hearing none, carried.
Thank you, Mayor. I move, seconded by Councillor Findura, the bylaws 2021-29, -30, -31, 32-33 be read a second time.
Does any member of council have any questions? Any opposed? Carried.
Thank you, Mayor. I move, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council hereby consents to that bylaws 2021-29-30, -31-32, and -33 going to third reading at this meeting.
Any opposed? Carried.
Thank you, Mayor. I move, seconded by Councillor Shaw, the bylaws 2021-29-30, -31, -32, and -33 be read a third time.
Any opposed? Carried.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We now have delegations. I would like to call upon Delegation Doug Hudgen. Please introduce yourself for the record and the organization you're representing, if any. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which time you'll have the opportunity to respond to any questions that Council may have for you. Good morning.
Good morning. So I'm good to go here?
Yeah, absolutely, sir. Go right ahead.
Okay, Mayor Sandra Masters and City Council. Thank you so much for hearing me today. My name is Doug Hudgen, and I own Classic Portable Sign Rentals, and as the president, I represent the interests of the 7 members of the Regina Portable Sign Association. Excuse me. I would like to review the circumstances that led to our request for a billboard moratorium on December 16, 2019. In August of that same year, Council in a 6-5 vote had approved a sign bylaw that decimated our industry. The bylaw dictated that a second portable sign could be placed on the same traffic flow street at 90 meters. That was exactly the same separation for permanent billboards. In addition, all portables would have to be 30 meters from a billboard, which eliminated 31.8 kilometers of street frontage for our industry. That number is based on our count of 163 permanent billboards, of which 40 were digital and 6 were on city setback or right-of-way. It didn't matter if the billboard was on a separate property and the portable sign advertised a merchant's own product on their own property, they were all to be removed. The reason for the regulations given by the city managers in our first appearance in June of 2019 had been other stakeholders' comments. That had switched to visual integrity by August. The provincial government sent back the sign bylaw, and we had one more chance to change it on December 16, 2019. In the meantime, 5 new billboards went up, 3 of them digital. It should be noted billboards have 2 years to be erected from their date of approval. On December 16th, we had no reason to believe the outcome would not be the same as August, and requested the billboard moratorium in order to cut our future losses. Council voted 8-3 to reject the previous regulations, and after negotiations with the city managers, a compromise was reached and endorsed by them for 70 meters before a second portable could be placed, and a reduction for the distance from a billboard for a portable to be 10 meters instead of 30. These regulations were passed by City Council in my 5th appearance almost a year ago. Saskatoon is represented as a comparison to Regina in the administration's report. The population there is 13% larger than Regina's, with almost exactly 13 more kilometers of major roadway or arterial roadway. My understanding from this report is their separation distance regulation for billboards is 200 meters compared to Regina's current 90 meters. Static standard billboards are often being increased in size and converted to digital monitors here. I'm not sure about the former, but the latter being something not allowed in Saskatoon. 3 new billboards have gone up in Regina since the beginning of the year, 2 of these on Albert Street and 1 digital on Vic East. At my request, planning verbally told me 3 more have been approved. Since the reduction of our industry's distance from billboards to 10 meters, or 10.6 kilometers of roadway being excluded for us at the time, our members have actually softened their stance on this matter and officially have no requests relating to the outcome. We're going to leave this decision in your capable hands. Our association had requested council look into bus bench billboards in Regina at that same December meeting, and a report was asked for by council. We compete directly with these billboards and went through the Freedom of Information Act to find out their numbers and any size regulation. Their numbers had been growing dramatically. The contract with the city showed there were just over 350 of them, and the supplier was obligated to place 10 new benches per year on city property, and provide 10 per year for city use at no charge. It should be noted there are about 150 portable billboards in the city. Basically those are billboards or portable signs that are used for off-site advertising. Our concern is there is no regulation regarding the size of the benches or the angle of their placement. The original 6-foot by 2-foot backrest for ads was suddenly increased by a board beneath the seat to increase the size from 12 square feet to 17. Eventually, we noticed the backrest size had increased again on some by 1 foot in length and 6 inches in height, now giving them 23 square feet of advertising space. By comparison, the standard portable billboard has 50 square feet of advertising space. Next, we noticed some of the bus bench billboards had been turned to an excessive angle to face the traffic flow. Like all other outdoor billboards and signage in Regina, we're requesting regulations for this product. I measured Saskatoon and Moose Jaw bus bench billboards in June of 2019, and their ad space was actually less than 12 square feet and no board beneath the bench. The board beneath the seat serves no public service, and I'm requesting it be removed. I would also request the size of the back bench be regulated to no larger than 7 feet by 2.5 feet, which is 17.5 square feet of ad space. We are also requesting the benches not be turned more than 2 feet from square to the street or back of the sidewalk. We think this is very fair. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and that's all I really have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Hudgen. Members of council, does anyone have questions for the delegation?
I couldn't get into the chat, Mayor. I have a question, if that's fine. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Please proceed.
Doug, I'd like to ask you a couple questions through you, Madam Mayor. So the contract with the bus benches, do we know who that is with?
Patterson Outdoors is the supplier for the bus benches. I mean, it's a contract that comes up every 5 years, and they first acquired it, and I'm going to say, I believe, 2018, July 1st, I believe.
Okay. And that's why it's coming up in 2030. Were anybody local sign people like yourself, and I know a couple other ones, ever requested to put in a bid for this contract through you, Madam Mayor?
No requests were made for us. We weren't made aware of it, but they do. They advertise things like that on the city page and on their website. It has never been pointed directly out to us that, hey, there's a bus bench, contract coming up. No, that's never happened.
Okay, so in learning this, I'm having a lot of difficulty since we as a city and we as a community are always saying local. Now you're telling me that contract wasn't available to you guys through you, Madam Mayor, and that's correct. I just want to establish that for sure, Doug. Thank you.
It was available to us. Like I say, we just had to find out about it on our own. It's something that if we made it our business to find out about it, I'm sure somebody could have that had interest in it. And as they say, they advertise it, but nobody, and I deal with planning all the time and so on, but nobody ever said, hey, there's a bus bench contract coming up in a year. No, that never happened.
So as a request from a local business here in Regina, would that be something that would be key to the success of your business through you, Madam Mayor?
Well, I mean, I'm a portable sign rental company. That's that's what I provide. For myself, it wouldn't have been of interest, I don't believe. But I mean, we have other members that could possibly have wanted to bid on that and may do so in the future when it comes up again. Now that they're all aware of when it's coming up, like I say, it's not a concern of mine specifically that I wanted to bid on this. But I mean, the sign guys may want to, postcard portables may want to. I mean, it's just something that it was sort of out of sight, out of mind. And we weren't aware at the time the last contract came up that it was coming up.
Okay,
and if
so
they would just if you talk to city officials, they say, well, all you have to do is look at the website or look at the city page kind of thing in the leader posts. So.
Okay, Doug, thank you. I just wanted some clarification on that, and then I want to know what we can do better in the future for future contracts. So that's muchly appreciated. That's all the questions I have, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Findura.
There we go. We're on it. Good morning, Mr. Hodges. How you are asking about moratorium? Is that your still the strongest ask?
Well, the moratorium, as I said, we've softened our position somewhat because the 30 meters at the December meeting, we were still facing 30 meters on either side of a billboard, and that would have eliminated, there was businesses that were next door to these billboards advertising on their own properties that would have to remove their portable signs. So, I mean, the 30 meters was really punitive. At the time in December, actually, the request, was that it be eliminated completely. And I don't know if you recall, but I offered a compromise at that meeting and said, okay, what you're doing here is going to eliminate hundreds of our signs. Let's look at a compromise. And council embraced that and voted 8-3 to embrace this compromise. And then we sat down with the city officials and came up with as I said, a compromise, which was 10 meters on either side of a billboard and 70 meters to set up a second portable. You need, once you hit 71 meters, you can put up a second portable on a property. And before that, they wanted 90 meters and 30 meters. And so, as I said, our position has softened. I think it's up to you people on council and the mayor to look at the numbers, compare them to whatever other centers they've offered, comparison to, and come to a conclusion. Our members, as I said, as a group, softened on this issue. There's lots of product out there for the billboard industry. They've got about 170 billboards out there. As I said, in Saskatoon, you need 200 meters to set up a second billboard on a street frontage. And in Regina, you need 90. I mean, there's a lot of billboards out there. It's pretty saturated. I don't know if we need any more. That's going to be up to you people. And that's all I can really comment to at this point.
Okay, through you, Mayor Masters, because your comments were too that there within just this year there was 3 more that went up and you didn't have any idea. You saying that the because you had to get a freedom of information. Are you saying that the city is not communicating with you correctly, or what's your well,
I mean, we had to go through the Freedom of Information Act to get the bus bench contract and find out how many billboards were on city property and how many were actually, leasing city property, and how many there were. Basically, we couldn't find out how many there were total because they're not permitted. Like we have a yearly permit, so they know exactly how many portable signs are in the city. But because they're not permitted, they get a one-time permit and then they're up for life. Basically, they didn't know how many there were. So what we found out was there was just over 20 billboards on city property paying a lease to the city. And by our own count, we went out and found altogether 163 billboards. So as we're not being treated properly by the city in regard to that, there's privacy issues. And basically, they just said it didn't matter, who it was. A city councilor could have asked for these numbers, and you would have had to go through the Freedom of Information Act to get it. So I think that's what just basically proper procedure. In relation to the original bylaw that came through, yeah, I thought we were treated unfairly by the city managers. Absolutely. I mean, when this comes out of the blue and now you need, you're eliminating 32 kilometers of street frontage for our use, and basically doubling the distance for the separation for portable signs from 45 meters to 90 meters. That was the proposal. Then, yeah, in that regard, I would say yes. There was definitely some how would you say, treatment that I wasn't impressed with.
Okay, too many masters. But you've got business and you got colleagues or in Saskatoon. with the bus benches, I didn't have a chance to ask or look into it. Are they permitted in Saskatoon? Because then you said they're not permitted here. They just get one permit at one time and then it goes. Do you know how they behave in Saskatoon with the bus benches?
Well, bus benches aren't permitted at all. They're in city setback. So the only things that need a permit are things that are on private property, and we have to be on private property. So and they do it the same way we do. They set up a tender. People bid on it. My concern with the bus benches is not who has the contract or whatever. It's the size of them and the way they're placed. In Saskatoon, I was up there. I got a picture of one. I measured the advertising face, and it was, about 12 square feet, a little under. And my concern is that in Regina, some of them have grown to 23, square feet. Increasing the size from 6 feet by 2 feet to adding a board underneath. And then we noticed that some of them, instead of 6 by 2, are now 7 by 2.5, the backrest. And that's my concern there. That's why the request to remove the board underneath. I don't think it serves any purpose for public service. I mean, you walk up there, they call it a kickboard, but if you kick that board, you're going to leave sludge and dirt and slush on the board. The next person that sits on it, they have their back of their legs against that board. So it's solely for advertising purposes. We just want some fairness in relation to that. All signage, outdoor signage, has regulations for size and placement, except for the bus bench billboards. Now, their numbers grew dramatically a few years ago. If I looked at my numbers, I believe there was 40-some bus benches on Albert Street. The way we're looking at it is we want regulations that dictate their size or regulate their size and their placement. So the 2 feet, turning them to face the traffic flow, we want a limit of 2 feet. And we're just asking them to remove the board underneath. If they want to increase the size to 7 feet by 2.5 feet, we're okay with that. I mean, it'll be 5 square feet bigger than Moose Jaw in Saskatoon, but it's the board underneath that we're concerned about, and the placement, the turning of them.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Masters.
Thank you, Councillor
Thank you,
Fedora.
Councillor
Councillor
Fedora.
Hawkins.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. Through you, for Mr. Hudson. When you place a portable billboard sign, do you have to get permission from the property owner upon which you place the sign?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
And is that true when you place signs on city property, or do you ever place portable signs on city property?
Portable signs are not allowed on city setback or city-owned property.
I'm just going to ask this question. I'm uncertain of the answer. Often when I drive south on the Louvain towards the airport, I see portable signs along the west side of the Louvain. I was under the impression that's city property. Do you have any idea what's going on there?
Yeah, that is city property. We complained about that for a year. The Portable Sign Association polices itself. We complained about that multiple times. It's finally been cleaned up out there over a year. Their literally enforcement was very lax. Just due to COVID, due to whatever, they said they didn't have the personnel to go out and enforce this stuff. We actually had, at one point, almost 18 signs. Now, none of them were from our members. I shouldn't say that. One sign was from one of our members. One of those signs on the Louvain, near Regina Avenue, was supposed to be for public service for the Cali Curling Club. So the sign guys had one there. Now, it's since been removed. I guess they had some sort of community-spirited deal with the city where they could put one there. But literally, we had to, I think it just happened about a month ago, and we first started complaining about those signs on the Louvain probably a year ago. It was, basically, it was just lack of enforcement that was the problem there.
When you complain, who do you complain to?
We go through Service Regina. They forward it to the planning department. Planning department enforces the regulations for portable signage. And like I say, it's been quite a quite an ordeal the last few years getting enforcement. As I said, with the last year with COVID, we understand some of the issues, but some of these signs, finally, I had a talk with the GM of planning and just put it a little more forcefully, and they got out and they cleaned up. There was a couple on McDonald Street that had been sitting on setback for a year, and that's the last thing we want. I mean, when you're playing by the rules, following the regulations, and you see one of these new sign companies, and there's a couple or three of them, putting signs on setback or city property, and nothing's done about it for months and months. I mean, it's annoying for our membership. As I said, we're legitimate businessmen, and when somebody's breaking the rules and getting away with it, we're as upset as anybody. So there's just a lack of enforcement. As I said, we police ourselves. We report these things regularly, and finally we got them all cleaned up. There had to be about a dozen or whatever on city property. So, and that Louvain one was a major annoyance to a few of us, because it was just get out there and do it. Just tell them to get them off, or you're going to tow them.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins, for coming forward. You talked about the bus benches. Can you just tell me, is that a contract with Patterson, or how does that work? And I know the last time you came, you also had a little bit of a concern, and I want to ask about the revenue as well. Can you elaborate, please? Through the chair.
Well, the contract is currently with Patterson. I think the previous contract, this is to the best of my recollection, I think the previous contract was with Rolco Radio, Rolco Group, or Harvard. I think Rolco. So, like I say, it's just something that comes up every 5 years. As for the finances of it, the city gets paid $38 per month to have a bus bench on their setback. I mean, it provides public service, and that's a wonderful thing. Like I said, our concern is the size of them, the growing size, and the way they're turned. So I don't know, does that answer your question?
Okay. Yeah, it does. Thank you. So the recommended size, you are fine with the 6 feet by 2 feet. You said they've increased from 7 to 2.5, and I guess you've indicated that the concern, just elaborate the concern that they're getting bigger is what?
Well, yeah, they were 6 foot by 2 foot, the backrest, and then they added a board underneath. And then some of them, not all of them, went to 7 feet by 2.5 feet. And what we're requesting is the board underneath be removed. If they want to leave them 7 feet by 2.5 feet, we're okay with that. I mean, they did start out at 6 by 2. But the board underneath, I just feel that it's basically for nothing more than advertising purposes. It's nothing to do with the comfort of anybody sitting on that bench or cleaning their feet before they get on a bus. It's, as I said before, if you kick that board, you're going to put slush and mud and whatever. And we do have a side of the benches so that if you really want to clean your feet, go over there and kick it. So basically what we want is or requesting is that the board underneath be removed. And if they want to leave them 7 feet by 2.5 feet, I guess that'd be some goodwill, that we're not as concerned about. Be bigger than everywhere else, but still, not a big issue for us.
Sorry, so through you, Madam Chair, are you saying though you want that board underneath removed because it's adding advertising to that bench that's been in competition, or I'm just not sure why that's...
Yeah, exactly. What you just said, exactly. Yeah, we find that it's, when you got a bus bench that has 23.5 square feet of advertising space, and the average portable sign now has, the average portable sign has 50 square feet of advertising space. So, and they're sitting on the edge of the sidewalk. And, sometimes we have to be 13 meters in from, the city owns 13 meters, but anywhere from 1 to 13 meters. I think 13.5 meters is the largest setback in Regina. But commonly, some are 8 meters, some are 3, some are 5. And, of course, the bus bench billboards can just sit on the edge of the street, which is understandable, for riders. like I said, our concern is that the size has been growing, and we just feel that board underneath is just for advertising, and we feel that our request is that it be removed.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Any further questions from council? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation this morning. I'll ask that you please leave the meeting now.
Okay, thanks for having me. It's just for advertising, and we feel that our request is that it be removed.
Okay.
I'd like to call upon delegation Andrew Natchuk, Pattison out there advertising. Please introduce yourself for the record and the organization you're representing. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which you'll have the opportunity to respond to questions. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, sir.
Oh, perfect. Well, my name is Andrew Natchuk. I'm with Pattison Outdoor Advertising. With the moratorium on new billboards in Regina should be denied. Regina does not have more billboards than other similarly sized markets, including Saskatoon. And the 2019 Regina zoning bylaw has already substantially reduced the opportunities for new billboards in Regina. Further billboard restrictions are necessary and will not effectively reduce visual clutter. If the City of Regina wants to address visual clutter, it should look at the approximately 500 portable signs in Regina, not billboards. This motion item presented by the Portable Sign Association of Regina is for their benefit only and seems wholly self-serving. Billboards play an important role for businesses and are necessary for proper marketing in the community. Billboards are essential revenue streams and are often included in mortgages and financial plans for landowners. For these reasons, and the many more that will be presented by the City in their report, we asked the City Council to deny the proposed moratorium on new billboards in Regina. Now, as for the item concerning the bus bench advertising in Regina, Pattison was awarded the Regina Transit Bench Supply and Advertising contract after a successful RFP in 2018. This RFP was open to the public and was fairly conducted. It was open to any company from Regina, from across Canada, from basically anywhere in the world. The City of Regina benefits from this contract through financial payment, which was about $117,000 per year, and from Pattison supplying, constructing, and maintaining the benches, and even emptying the garbage cans at the bus stops. Without the bus bench advertising, this revenue stream would flip to a major cost for the city, as transit would have to supply their own benches, deal with the maintenance, and once again, even empty out all the garbage cans. There are currently 257 bus benches in Regina, all of which conform to the specifications outlined in the RFP. The design of the Regina benches is consistent with the 14 other Pattison bus bench markets that we have in Canada. We use this exact same Regina bench design without issue in all our prairie markets, including Edmonton, Okotoks, Spruce Grove, St. Albert, and Lethbridge. These benches are mass-produced with a consistent design for ease of advertising, which is absolutely crucial for national campaigns. If the Regina benches differ from the standard design, we will lose out on these nationwide advertising campaigns. This means less money for the city. The benches are also angled towards traffic, so people on the bench can see the bus coming, and so oncoming traffic can see the bench. If people can't see the benches, once again, this contract loses value and the city loses money. And as for the kick plates and the extra size, once again, we're just trying to make ends meet on this contract. It's a pretty substantial payment that we've agreed to with the city. Like we said, there's mutual benefit here, but obviously with marketing budgets being extremely tight right now, we're just trying to turn a dollar on this essentially. So for these reasons and all those outlined in the city's report, we asked that the bus bench advertising regulations remain unchanged. And that's all I had, so I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Natchuk. I apologize. Councillor Shaw.
Good morning. Through you, Madam Mayor, you mentioned in your in your speech that you're just trying to make ends meet. Can you please tell me what your gross revenue is in from Patterson Signs yearly?
Like, I don't know. We're a national company. I know that on this contract, we're not making a lot of money.
Can you tell me how much money you're making through you, Madam Mayor?
Councillor Shaw, it's not appropriate to ask on a private RFP. It was fairly conducted.
Oh, this is private.
All RFPs are, the process is private.
Okay, the process is private.
It's a proprietary business, so yes.
Okay. Okay. I'm having a hard time here with you when you're saying that you're just trying to make ends meet when you're a multi-billion-dollar company, and these are our local company here within Regina, and you're kind of competing with the ma and pa's, and you say that you're not making much money off of these billboard signs. Obviously, I can't find out what you're making, but if you're not making that much, then why do you continue to put the bid in to have these contracts through you, Madam Mayor?
Well, there's still value in having these people. Just like there's a place for portable signs and there's a place for billboards, there's a place for bus benches. A lot of national companies want to advertise on multiple different products in the outdoor sector. So having the availability of the transit shelters, the buses, the bus benches, the billboards, the portable signs is necessary for a lot of these campaigns to actually work. So that's why we're in the bus bench industry. It makes sense to have it in the portfolio.
Even if you're not making that much money on it through you, Madam Mayor? I'm just trying to look at this as a business mind here, just for a second here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Even like I said, sometimes having that in the portfolio can then bolster other parts of it. You'll gain campaigns from companies that might otherwise not have come to you because they want to have something like that to advertise.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying is, so even though you might not make much money off of that per se, you're making revenue because you have that to offer to other people. So it's a roundabout thing through you, Madam Mayor. Is that correct in what I'm saying or hearing?
Well, it's something. Pretty much any contract that comes up in the province of Saskatchewan or in Canada, we're generally going to want to bid on it. We want to have these products in our portfolio. At the outset of this contract, did we know that we weren't going to make a ton of money on it? Absolutely not. We bid competitively. We thought that we were going to be getting, something that we could sell for more than we were, but that's just isn't the case. So in the end, it's not a major like profit for us to have these bus benches, which is part of the deal. Like, we sell advertising on them in order to supply the benches. I think that when you look at the scope of a contract like this, just like Doug said, those guys aren't interested in a contract like this. Like, it involves supplying 257 benches. That involves a lot of capital right off the bat. It involves a lot of money. So to break even on these deals is quite often very difficult.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Findura.
Thank you. Good morning. Question to you, Madam Mayor. Any issues if you don't have the boards on the bottom, what we call a kick plate on the bench? Is that changes the scheme or how you advertise or what you need to, as you're talking about promoting the information that's out there, or just by paying what you're paying for the benches, if the kick plate would be, or the board on the bottom would be removed? Do you have any issues with that?
Well, it reduces the profitability of the benches.
Okay. This, because I can't remember when they, because I know that the contract, even though it's it's done to RFP, then I believe comes to council. I can't remember. 2018 is a long time ago. Is this contract also includes the bus benches and advertising on the buses?
No, those are two separate ones. So there's the bus bench, and then there's transit shelters and buses, which was a separate RFP.
Okay, great, thank you. Can the advertising community work together to achieve the best outcome? Like, I mean, if you heard the previous presenter said that they don't have too much of some of it, but not too much of an issue with the billboards, because certain distance were approved type of thing. Do you feel, because you made a comment about the problem we have here is with the portable signs, not with the billboards like yours? Could the community come together and figure out the best way of operating?
Well, I didn't say. I said that if the city wanted to look at visual clutter, then I think that portable signs, that there should be a little bit more of a focus on that, perhaps. So it's to that point. But we haven't brought up really any of these issues. We've kind of just been responding to their allegations against us and their proposed moratorium on billboards. We've just basically been responding to all of those.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ventura. I'll apologize. I went to you out of queue. I apologize. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mayor. For Mr. Natchik, do you have statistics on the number of billboards in Regina and in Saskatoon?
Like just overall total billboards?
Yeah.
I've got rough based on like ours and our main competitors. Saskatoon has about 15% more billboards than Regina does, based on my rough estimates.
Thank you. And last question, what are the regulations regarding the spacing of billboards between billboards in the two cities? The earlier delegation mentioned the numbers 90 and 200. Can you give exact spacing regulations between billboards?
Yep, no, those are accurate. In Saskatoon, it's 200 meters for two billboards facing the same oncoming traffic. For Regina, it's 90 meters facing the same oncoming traffic. Obviously, that there's differences between the placement of billboards in the two cities. Regina has been leaning quite heavily on the cone of vision for traffic. Saskatoon, not so much. Overall, the two cities' bylaws are fairly similar. They are fairly similar in operation. There's not a whole lot of difference between the two.
Thank you. One last thing. What's the difference in pricing between Saskatoon and Regina for putting up a billboard, for renting space to put up a billboard?
It's pretty much identical. Regina's a little bit more expensive, I would say, like in terms of what landowners expect, but that's a generalization.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Bresciani.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. Just in regards to the bus benches, I heard you mention municipalities in Alberta. Do you have the contract for benches in Saskatchewan as well, and in Saskatoon in particular, the chair?
No, we don't. Saskatoon is with Creative Outdoor. Whenever that one comes up, obviously we'll bid on it. I live in Saskatoon. I see the benches here all the time. You guys could see the pictures in the city report. They do have a smaller advertising area, but the overall square footage of the bench is quite large. They're really large plastic benches, and they don't look too great.
Okay, so I just want to do you use these larger benches anywhere in Saskatchewan that you're using in Regina is my question. Because you mentioned all of the Alberta.
Yeah, no, we don't have any other bus bench markets in Saskatchewan, so no.
Okay, so this larger
if we
benches.
did, sorry, if we did, yes, this would be the same design. It's like I said, it's our national design that we use.
Okay, so, all right, yeah. So then we're the only one. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none, I'll thank you very much for your presentation today, sir, and ask that you now please leave the meeting. Oh, I apologize. If you can hang on, Councillor Mancinelli.
Okay.
Sorry, I did have one question for you. Respect your comment, or through the chair, respect the comments made about contracts and size of advertising offered and deals made. In reference to the parallel nature to the street, is that part of the advertising contracts you've been able to get as well? To have the benches twisted in this manner? Just thinking about visual integrity and what the norm is over the past years. Through the chair.
Sorry, just are you asking if the contracts?
The contracts state that you have to have the twist to the benches.
Like the contract with the city through the RFP?
No, I think in the points you made with other councillors, you had mentioned that a lot of people who advertise on the benches have expectation of the size and the type of advertising they purchased, and you're bound to that. I was just wondering if the same lines up with the twisting of the benches away from parallel to the street.
Well, it just aids in the visibility of the bench to oncoming traffic, and as our transit counterpart will mention as well. It's also for the people on the bench to see the bus coming. So the benches are erected before we sell them. They're not put like, it's not like someone would buy a spot and then we put a bench there with the ad on it. The benches are there 365 days a year, and then if someone buys it, then we put the ad on it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mancinelli. Now I'll say, sir, thank you very much for your presentation and answering questions today, and ask that you please leave the meeting now.
Okay, thank you.
We'll now consider item CM 21-8, billboards and transit signs, response to motion CM 19-6. Can I have someone move the report?
Stadnichuk.
Thank you, Councillor Stadnichuk. Can I have a seconder?
Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. I'll call on Diana Harlech to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. On December 16, 2019, City Council considered Report CM 19-16 concerning the adoption of the new Regina zoning bylaw, and asked that administration bring a report back to Council in Q1 of 2020 that looked at the 5 issues regarding signage and the Pattison outdoor contract. City Council considered items 1, 2, and 3 at the April 29, 2020 meeting, which resulted in amendments to the zoning bylaw, as Mr. Hutchinson said, to address their concerns. However, administration determined to bring forward items 4 and 5 today because it was deemed that a separate report would be needed because of the interests with regards to billboards and any moratorium that would take place. So we'd be happy to answer any questions with respect to our recommendations.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions for administration? Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Terrific. Thank you. I was wondering if administration could give me an idea of how much money we generate from the portable signs compared to what we generate through these leases with Pattison or other companies that construct billboards on public property.
Through you, Masters, I'll ask Mr. Searle to start, and it's a two-part question because the other part is with Mr. Onrait's area with regards to the bus shelters and the benches.
Thank you. Mr. Searle?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Masters, the revenue that we would generate from portable signs on an annual basis is in the range of $25,000 to $27,000. It's based on approximately 500 portable sign permits at a cost of, I believe it's $44 per permit.
Thank you, Mr. Searle. Mr. Onright?
Thank you. Through Mayor Masters. So the revenue on bus advertising on the buses is $780,000 a year, and the revenue on the bus benches, as indicated by the delegation, is $117,000 a year, for a total just shy of $900,000.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I will maybe point out that revenue is used to offset operating expenses in the transit system, so it stays within transit.
Thank you. So if I'm comparing here, if we're thinking of the implications of a moratorium, we generate revenue from the deals we have struck with Pattison and others. We just cover the cost of processing with portable signs. So I think from a revenue and a financial standpoint, a moratorium would actually not be a very constructive way forward, in addition to the fact that we get bus benches and some infrastructure from that relationship. So if we advance a moratorium, I think it's simply based on planning and traffic safety purposes, not to protect one industry over another. So as it stands, I do support the report as written.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Zakidniak?
Thank you. So I have a question related to Appendix C. So this is information on the contract with Pattison. So what I'm wondering, I noticed about, well, my first question is, through the chair, please, is it possible to change any provisions of the contract for transit benches before it expires on March 31st of 2023?
Mr. Onright?
Through you, Mayor Masters. I trust it is. I'm going to ask Mr. Weary to comment, and I will also would suggest that changes, if council so wish, to have the contract looked at. It is up in 2023. We could take this conversation into consideration regarding sizes of the advertising, sizes of the benches, location of the benches. I think the delegation explained the angle of the bench as we see it also. This is convenient for our customers to be able to see the oncoming bus, to know which one they are actually going to take, or they can see it coming into the bus stop. I'll ask Mr. Weary to comment.
Yes, Mayor Masters, in response to the question, this is a contract between two parties, so there's always the potential to amend a contract in contract. The one thing with contracts that are publicly, that come about as a result of a public procurement, is there are some limits on what the parties can negotiate if there are some parameters that were set out in the RFP, which forms the framework within which the contract is negotiated and finalized. So it would depend on the nature of the amendment.
Right. Okay. To be more clear, what I'm actually thinking about is not the stuff that was previously mentioned. What I'm interested in is the continuation of the rollout of more complete waste diversion. So I know that part of the contract requires them to supply garbages with the benches. I would also like to see us require recycling and compost. So is that a change that we could consider requiring in the middle of the contract?
Mr. Onright, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Masters. Rather than having that in this contract, that can be part of the discussion when we look at the solid waste curbside pickup in our recycling program. That'll be a conversation that comes back to council in Q4 of 2021.
Okay, so sorry, are you, oh, go ahead. Are you still?
Well, I would also add, as Mr. Weary has indicated, there will be some limitations as to what can be added in or taken out of the current contract.
Mhm.
And I will also add that this was a public procurement process. So when the RFP went out, it goes out publicly, local, Western Canadian business, anybody can bid on this contract. So the definitions are within the contract for the bus benches, and they are clearly defined in there in the current contract.
Sorry, just for clarity. So are you suggesting that in terms of my particular concern that we revisit it in Q4 when we talk about waste diversion, like the rollout of curbside food and yard waste, or that we revisit it prior to the next contract, or both?
Through you, Mayor Masters, what I would suggest is we have our recycling team maybe put a briefing note together and share that with council regarding your inquiry.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Zakiniak. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. I have questions for the administration on the regulations surrounding the placement of portable signs. The first question is this. I believe I heard from Mr. Searle that it was $44 for a permit to put up a portable sign. Is that the same price when the sign is being permitted on city property as when the sign is being permitted on private property?
So our permits are cost recovery, and that's for portable signs on private property. Any signage that would be on our property would either be negotiated through Mr. Lacey's, like the real estate area, or as Mr. Onrait said, through the contract with Pattison for bus and bus benches and bus shelters. So I might have to ask if Mr. Krawchuk has any details with regards to the billboards on our property.
Through you, Mayor Masters, no, real estate does not provide for leasing or renting space, city property, for portable signs.
Mayor, through you, just so I'm clear on this, so anybody that puts up a sign, portable sign anywhere, has to get a $44 permit. If it's on city property, we don't charge any amount additional for leasing that property itself for the sign?
One moment, Ms. Howrlock.
Through you, Mayor Masters, sorry if I wasn't clear. We don't allow portable billboards on our property. We only allow billboard signs on our property, and those are through contracts. Sorry if that wasn't clear.
Thank you very much. That is clear. That brings me to my second question. When we permit signs, portable signs on private property, are there any regulations on the distance between portable signs or the number of portable signs in a certain area on private property?
Through you, Mayor Masters, yes, the zoning bylaw does regulate that, and I'll ask Mr. Amar Guliani to go through the regulations and requirements.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The portable signs are only permitted one sign per lot. If the lot is less than 70 meters in width, for every additional 70 meters, you're allowed to have one more portable signs. And if if they happen to have been placed close to each other, they should not be placed closer than 10 meters from each other if they're allowed to have more than one portable sign on a lot.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. My next question is the enforcement question. We heard that enforcement had been very lax, and from my own visual observations, I thought it had been very lax. The reason given was COVID, which is not really a reason because signs, as we all know, are outside, and COVID protection could be taken outside without too much difficulty. Why is enforcement lax? What have we done to improve our enforcement? How do we complain if we think that enforcement of portable signs on city property or part of signs on city property need enforcement?
Ms. Hawryluk.
Through you, Mayor Masters, I might start and then ask Mr. Searle to add. So the enforcement, as Mr. Hutchinson said, the fees pay for 1/3 of a position to do enforcement, and that's the amount of FTEs. So what happened during COVID is there was a hiring freeze, and that position wasn't hired. So that was part of it. When we did hire the position again, it was winter conditions, and so we weren't able to go and remove the signs because of the conditions. But as soon as we were able to, all of the signs, as Mr. Hutchinson said, it has been dealt with, and so we do have our processes in place now to continue to do the enforcement. I'm not sure if Mr. Searle has anything more to add.
Through you, Mayor Masters, just to reiterate that we did certainly have some disruption in our enforcement service delivery, and through the course of the year, had to make strategic choices in terms of resource allocations for other business priorities, including achieving our service levels around permit review times and so forth. We have addressed the resourcing question and are establishing greater regularity in terms of our enforcement initiative in this area, and addressing situations where they would come up through complaint.
Thank you. I'm pleased about that. One last question and a brief comment. It was mentioned that Regina has 15% more billboard signs than Saskatoon. Why is that? What's the difference in regulation? Why is that?
Councillor Hawkins, I heard that Saskatoon has 15% more, but I'll ask Ms. Hawryluk.
Through you, Mayor Masters, I might ask Mr. Searle or Mr. Reid to provide a response with regards to the number that we have versus the number that Saskatoon has.
Through you, Mayor Masters, I'll ask Mr. Reid to respond.
Good morning. Through you, Mayor Masters. I believe the earlier delegate mentioned that Saskatoon actually has 15% more billboards than Regina does. So based on our best estimate of the number here being around 150 to 160, I would guess that Saskatoon has about 180.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the clarification on that. I have a very brief comment to make. I'm not going to support this recommendation. I'm very concerned about visual pollution caused by excessive outdoor signage, advertising signage. I think that we're at the limit. I don't want to see any more outdoor advertising signage, so I will not support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Shaw.
I'd like to know, I guess this would be administration's question. If we go with option 2 and implement a memorandum for new permanent billboard approvals, how would this benefit our local businesses, and would this benefit local businesses? Through you, Madam Mayor.
Through you, Mayor Masters. So the billboard specifically wouldn't benefit because it would just mean a moratorium means we cannot no longer allow any more billboards to be erected, which may actually, billboards are used for local businesses to advertise. So we'd actually limit that if we put a moratorium on billboards. I think the issue is there's a difference between the portable signs and what's going on with the bench and the bus shelters. That's a different issue. This is just about signage, billboards, and we've dealt with the portable signs through the zoning bylaw. And as Mr. Hutchinson had indicated, we addressed their concerns with portable signs on private property, and they've now, as his words, softened their position on a moratorium on billboards.
Okay, that's now, and I'm gonna kind of utter what Councillor Ockham said. I think we have enough. I feel that we're over Saskatoon's number. I'm not going to support this recommendation, but I will support option number 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. And just to clarify, Saskatoon has more billboards than Regina has, 15% higher, not the other way around. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Findura.
Hey, Masters, you gave me an option. We want to go longer in the meeting today. Question to administration. This is more of a price. So I'm looking at that. I think I'm going to ask the question anyways. Mr. Hodges mentioned that he had difficulties communicating with the city. I'd just like to have administration to defend his statement on what he was talking about. So, Mayor Masters.
Through you, Mayor Masters. So we have a relationship with the portable sign industry, and we work with them. As Mr. Hudgens said, the portable sign industry self-regulates themselves, and then we deal with any enforcement issues when there's encroachments and things of that nature. So I think over time we've built a relationship, and I know we haven't always agreed, like with the zoning bylaw, but we were able to work through those challenges and come to an agreement that met their needs and met our needs.
Thank you for that. Mayor Master, through you, just a quick comment is I know that big billboards are more expensive than the small portable, so I would look at and making sure that we have a balance, because there's some small businesses that depend on these portable signs to promote the business and all that. So I know that the administration understands, and to the zoning and even when the adjustments were made to the distance, I think we've done a good job. So I just want to make sure that we, and Ms. Howard like this mentioned, a good relationship. So I want to make sure that we are continuing on that. And I understand the pollution of more signs, but I think small business depends on. I mean, now it's social media and all that stuff, but they still do depend, on their billboard, smaller price to promote themselves. So just want to make sure that there's balance. Thank you.
Councillor Bresciani. Thank you, Councillor Findura.
Thank you. Just quickly on the lower boards that we've heard from Mr. Hutchins. City administration, he said that he did raise the concern. Can administration please elaborate on what are we going to continue with the lower board there, or is that going to be up for discussion when we move to the next, I guess, whenever this contract is over? Is that going to be considered in the next contract?
Through you, Mayor Masters. Definitely, Councillor Bresciani, we can have a look at that as we put together the RFP in 2023 for the new contract that will go out publicly.
That's great. And I appreciate that in that contract that there is the garbage pickup. Can I ask, was that ever done prior to, or was that something that, how did the city come up with that option, and how much, does it save us a lot of money in that regard?
Through you, Mayor Masters. So I think when you look at the contract in general, by going through the RFP process and having a third party provide that service, it does save the city money. For the simple fact, the city would then be required to go out and purchase the assets, maintain the assets, and then have city staff pick up the garbage. I'll ask Mr. Bells. I'm not actually sure when the garbage containers were actually added to the benches.
Through Mayor Masters, the garbage receptacle has been in for sure the last two contracts, so at least the last 8 years that the garbage receptacles was part of the bus bench contract.
Great, thank you. I would also agree that it would be great to have a recycle option as well. So if it was a garbage and a recycle, I think that would be really, really good to consider for the next contract as earlier stated. So I'll leave it there. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Any further questions from council? Seeing none, I have one. Given that this comes from 2019, I'm curious, Ms. Hawryluk, as it relates to the moratorium on billboard signs, to not approve your recommendation. What's the problem, as you understood it, that we were trying to solve with this report?
Through you, Mayor Masters. So at the beginning, with regards to the moratorium, there was a number of concerns with replace to, as Councillor Hawken indicated, visual clutter. And just the number of signs and the distances between them. So that's what we took into consideration, looking at what other cities have done and the options. And from our analysis, we're recommending that we keep it at the 90 meters and allow that to proceed. But there is two other options. One is the full moratorium, which means no other billboards could be allowed, or to place a stricter separation distance.
So we changed Regina zoning bylaw 2019-19, and I heard one of the delegations specify that it was somewhat more restrictive.
Through you, Mayor Masters, that is correct. I could ask Mr. Reid to go through the changes, if you'd like, between the previous bylaw and to what we got to with zoning bylaw 2019.
In the interest of time.
Okay.
I think I'm okay.
Okay.
That's all my questions. Seeing nothing further from council. Mr. Clerk, could you call the vote?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll begin with Councillor Stadnichuk, please.
In favor.
Councillor Hawkins.
Opposed.
Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
Opposed.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Moll.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Carries 9-2, Mayor.
Thank you. We have a delegation on the next item.
We do. I don't know if he's on.
I would like to call upon delegation Andre Noak, Age-Friendly Regina Steering Committee. Please introduce yourself for the record and the organization. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which you'll have the opportunity to respond to any questions that members of council may have from you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Please proceed.
My name is Andre Noak, and I chair the Age-Friendly Regina Steering Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor of the matter before you today, that of committing to work in partnership with our committee to progressively make of Regina an age-friendly city. This is not to say that our city is not, in many respects, age-friendly, but the notion of age-friendly is so broad and encompassing that there are always areas where we can be better. Our committee came into being in 2018. It is composed of a small steering committee and supported by a stakeholders group. It espouses the vision and goals of the World Health Organization age-friendly movement, that is, the creation of safe, respectful, accessible, and supportive environments where people of all ages can enjoy a healthy and active lifestyle, age positively, and are encouraged to contribute and participate fully. From the very beginning, we've received a solid support from the city in the form of representation of city staff on our committee, logistical support for our meetings, a keen expression of interest from a number of councillors, and recently, the endorsement of the Community Wellness Committee. We are very appreciative for that. The age-friendly journey is built on 4 milestones. The first is the establishment of an age-friendly committee. The second is the assessment of the community. In 2019, our committee conducted a survey focusing on the 8 domains of an age-friendly community. The analysis of the findings was captured in a report published in June of 2020. In an attempt to make the survey results more reflective of the demographics of the community, we have relaunched the survey this past winter, and at present, we are at approximately 650 responses. The conclusions of the initial report led to the development of Age Well Regina, a 64-page document outlining options and services in 3 areas: supported housing and care, mental health services, crime prevention and safety. The 3rd and 4th milestones are interchangeable. In our case, we've already developed a short-term work plan, the cornerstone of which is the recommendation for the introduction of an age-friendly lens to the City of Regina planning process. A draft checklist, included in your material, is being developed in partnership with administration, which will hopefully become a useful tool whenever policies, programs, and services are being reviewed and developed. The 4th milestone is seeking the endorsement of municipal government. That's what is before you today. This milestone is a key element in the process because the role the city plays in the life and well-being of the community is vital. Your endorsement of the recommendation will represent the public expression of a commitment to work towards becoming age-friendly Regina. How will the city fulfill this commitment? The recommendation details it as follows: by participating, supporting, promoting, and working to assess and improve inclusion and accessibility for individuals of all ages. Our partnership with the city envisages a community that is inclusive in its approach and its policies, a community that has programs and services, structures and settings that are fully and easily accessible, one where politicians and administrators listen attentively and communicate effectively for the benefit of all. By adopting this recommendation, the city will be joining a large number of cities and towns in Saskatchewan, across Canada, and around the world that have already embarked on the age-friendly journey. It will also open the way for us to apply to the provincial government for official recognition of Regina as an age-friendly city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Councillors, do you have questions for the delegation? Councillor Shaw? Oh, I apologize. No, Councillor Shaw, please go ahead.
Okay. First of all, thank you for your presentation. I welcome this to the City of Regina. We boast and we're trying to eventually become inclusive to everybody, and this is a really good step in the right direction. Can you talk a little bit more? I know it's an age-friendly recommendation in the committee, but I'd like you to talk a little bit more about how this will encompass broader than just age-friendly. Through you, Madam Mayor.
Well, the age-friendly movement is a very broad in scope. It encompasses every facet of life in the community, from transportation to housing, from social participation to social inclusion, communication, information, community support, health services. So it covers the whole gamut.
Is that, and that's exactly, I just wanted you to just speak a little bit more to that, and that was great. Thank you. Can you explain to me, sorry, you said that you're going to apply to the federal government. Can you say that over again? I didn't quite catch all of that, and what this will mean to the citizens of Regina and the city itself.
No, I said that we would apply to the government of Saskatchewan for official recognition of Regina. No, not to the federal government.
Oh. Okay, sorry. That's what I wanted to clarify who that was. So you can apply to, once we recommend this and once this goes through, then we can apply to the government of Saskatchewan to be recognized as an age-friendly city. Is that what I was hearing? Are you, Madam Mayor?
Yes. Once a community has reached a certain number of milestones, we recommend to the province the official recognition of a community or a city, and the provincial government has a recognition program to do just that.
Oh, okay. That sounds wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I'll be fully in support of this. Thank you. That's all the questions I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you very much, Andre, for being here today, and absolutely thank you for all of the work that you've done. Can you still hear me? My screen is black. Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you, Councillor.
Great, thank you. So the work that your committee has done has been unbelievable. I've been grateful to sit on, to attend some of the meetings, but can you just touch on the age-friendly tool that you guys have created and just elaborate a little bit about how that will benefit, and it links into exactly some of the things that when you partner with the city, it'll help seniors, through the chair.
Well, there are two tools. One is the Age Well Regina document that was prepared a year ago, which focuses on 3 areas that had been brought up as concerns in the community, and that was accessibility to affordable housing, concerns about mental health, and concerns about crime prevention. So the Age Well Regina document lists a whole series of services and supports that already exist in the city. It's a question of making this information available to the citizenry. The other tool that we mentioned, it's the checklist that is presently being worked on in cooperation with the administration. And this is basically a checklist for administrators to use whenever they are in the process of developing a program, a service, or reviewing a policy. It's questions that they need to have before them, and they need to ask themselves, is this program, is this service, is it age-friendly? Is it accessible to everyone? Does it include everyone? And this checklist, I think, will be the major tool for the city to adopt an age-friendly lens whenever they do policy and program development.
Excellent, thank you. That's wonderful. I also there was conversation about that age-friendly Regina would also be a partner, and the city would be able to consult with the age-friendly committee on some of the, if they have questions around if we're developing something or programming. Do you see that will be a huge benefit moving forward with the age-friendly committee, but also benefit the residents of Regina for this link between the two?
Very much so, and that is already happening. For instance, when recently the city had a consultation on community safety and wellness, we were invited to participate in a focus group. Same thing when the city was doing a consultation on the renewal of the master transit plan. We were invited to recommend representatives to that consultation. So we are in the process of developing an index or listing of people that would be not only interested but knowledgeable to contribute to such continued consultations.
That's great. I again, how many members sit around the Age-Friendly Regina Committee? Through the chair.
The committee itself, the steering committee, is a committee of 10 of community representatives, and then the stakeholders group at the present time is 17. Some of those are organizations, and some of those are individuals.
Okay. Again, I've seen the work that you have put into it 4 years, since 2018, and I just have to say thank you to the committee if you pass that on. And I'll be absolutely supporting this. Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Councillor Stadnichuk.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. Thank you, through the Mayor, thank you, Andre, for your presentation. I just wanted to follow up on a question regarding the surveys that your organization, that Age-Friendly Regina, has been doing. I understand that there was at first not a lot of responses from the full diversity of people in Regina, such as newcomers, Indigenous, lower income, older adults. So I just want to ask what you did to try to address that and what you're hoping to do in terms of trying to be as inclusive as possible to the full diversity of people in the city.
Okay. You're quite right. The initial survey only generated something shy of 400 responses. And when the analysis was done, it became obvious that there's some sectors of the community that were not very well represented. And the ones you mentioned are accurate. The Aboriginal community was not very noticed. The new arrivals to the city, the disenfranchised, the folks from the poorer areas of the city. So this is why it was relaunched with the assistance of the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Department's assistance. We're presently at 650 plus responses. We're leaving the survey open. People can still complete the survey, and we're hoping to reach 1,000, at which point we will do a second analysis and hopefully arrive at clearer conclusions, which will direct us in our amended work plans.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stadnichuk. I see no further questions from Council, sir. I'll thank you very much for your presentation today, as well as your leadership on this initiative, and ask that you please leave the meeting now.
Thank you.
We'll now consider item CR 21-72, Community Wellness, Community Age-Friendly Cities. Councillor Stevens, can I ask that you please introduce the report?
Absolutely. Can I get a seconder, please?
Bresciani.
Thank you. So through the chair, this is a result of at least 3 years of public engagement, consultation, and ultimately a motion from council And I want to recognize the work of Councillor Bresciani and former Councillor Barbara Young for getting us to this point. At the same time, a lot of city staff and community members worked hard to get us to where we are here. And as we heard and as we see in the report, this is ultimately about making the city's infrastructure and services and the community as a whole more accessible along age-friendly guidelines. It's also worth mentioning, as was discussed, that in the course of these conversations, changes that benefit our older community members and that actually benefit the community at large as well. So for instance, anything we do to improve transit, improve sidewalks, walkability, snow removal, recreation programming, the benefits to one can really be a benefit to all. I'll ask administration 2 questions. Well, actually, one is if you can just provide an overview of what this report entails and the next steps administration will be taking to advance the age-friendly agenda.
Through you, Mayor Masters, I might ask Mr. Slater to walk through how our tool will be used and then the next steps.
Thanks for the question. Through you, Mayor Masters. I think the next steps here with our tool, it should be noted that the tool is really in a draft form, and we developed that based on federal and provincial age-friendly domains. I think what's important is the tool we'll need to make sure that the tool is relevant to Regina. So we'll work in collaboration with the age-friendly committee and residents of Regina to make sure that the toolkit is relevant to here. And then internally, we would need to have discussions at a director level and discuss what that's going to look like, for implementing throughout the corporation.
Okay, thank you. My final question, building on what Councillor Stadnichuk had raised, there were some challenges in the data collection and creation process, making it more. Can you identify how we're going to confront that challenge in the future and ensure that all of those different voices and communities are represented in the outcome?
Through you, Mayor Masters. Thanks for the question again. I think right now it should be noted that a holdup is obviously present with the pandemic. I think in a lot of instances we'd love to have paper copies available in physical locations. I think that's going to be a major contributor to access to these surveys. We'll also work very closely with our communications citizen experience group to identify different strategies to further get the survey out to the community.
Perfect. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Mr. Slater. Councillor Bresciani. Sorry, Councillor Bresciani, can you get on?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
We can, yes.
Okay. So thank you. This is so great. We've been, as Councillor Stevens has said, this is something that we've been working on for quite a while, and the committee has been resilient in not to get frustrated and stop. They've continued on their journey, and it's just great to see this come to fruition. I do have a question in regard to the staff in regards to if there's going to be down the road as this moves forward, will there be any grant funding if it's deemed that for senior programming or something like that? Will that be something that will come back to council at some time, or how would that work through the chair?
Mr. Slater. Through you, Madam Chairman, I might ask Mr. Slater.
Thanks, Diana. Through you, Mayor Masters. Yeah, we would, as we would with any other community-based group, we would provide our consulting on our community investment grant program and help them navigate the formalities of that program. We could also identify other community grants, whether they be at different levels of government or other community-based grants that we could pass along to them to educate the group on other opportunities.
Thank you, through the chair. And I also want to thank Dave as well for his work on this committee. Would we be able to assist with like completing forms and getting some of that stuff? Because that's sometimes when you look at all these grants, it gets very confusing. Was that something that we would also consider if that was a barrier to the chair?
Through you, Mayor Masters, absolutely. That's part of our role to work with community organizations, and we're very hands-on on that work and supporting them in writing the applications.
Great. We've just approved accessibility and talking about recreation, but also talking about programming. I guess what I'm asking is when we look at seniors and accessibility, as there is some overlap there. So if we're looking at sidewalks or snow removal, that was an issue that came up with as well in the discussions with Age Friendly. Again, I think that's the benefit that we will be able to see, and will staff be mirroring the two to move those forward collectively when we've got, again, that's kind of, it's going to benefit not just people with disability and seniors, but everybody. How will some of the things come forward? That's what I'm wondering. So if we're looking at housing, I've heard many times affordable housing for seniors. Well, how does that work through this report? That how will that work coming back? Through you, Madam Mayor.
Through you, Mayor Masters. So when it comes to specifically the seniors housing, there was some recommendations to look at that through the comprehensive housing strategy in our HIP program. So those are things that we would be looking at through that. I think with the motion to look at bringing a report back with respect to, excuse me, preparing a report to council that would, the resources need to develop an accessibility plan. That would also be an area that we would be able to look at. So we kind of look at it from all different angles, and then of course we would work with our colleagues in Mr. Onrait's area to look at what are the opportunities that we have with respect to things like you had just mentioned with accessibility, sidewalks, those sorts of things. So we have a number of different tools in our toolbox to help us address those issues.
Thank you. I know we do have a report coming back in regards to taxation, and some of the things I know that I've heard from seniors, and I'm just wondering about any tax credits or anything like that. Would that be something that we could consider as well for seniors in that report that would be coming back, as we were looking for more, I think it was more of the lower income incentives? Is that something that we could consider as well through the chair?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Masters. So I know on the seniors piece, particularly on the utility billing side, there are some programs, but this relates to the tax side I'm aware of. So I will ask Ms. Bryden, who has been working on this report, to provide comment on the credits for property taxes. Ms. Bryden?
Good morning. Through you, Mayor Masters. So we are in our gathering of data, we are gathering information and considerations for different options related to low-income seniors or low-income families and potential affordability programs for both property tax and utility billing.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's great. And my last question I do have is in regards to ensuring that we have the programming to for seniors to live a healthy and active lifestyle. And do we have programs, and are we looking to enhance those programs for our seniors at this time through the chair? And how would that work? Through the engagement with seniors, or how is that going to work through the chair?
Through you, Mayor Masters, I might ask Ms. Shaley to talk about the programming that we have in place and that what we're looking at.
Through you, Mayor Masters. So we have a couple of approaches. We currently do offer a range of programs for older adults and for all ages within the community. However, we will continue to have conversations with the Age-Friendly Committee and some of the other nonprofits that we're currently working with to explore new opportunities, as well with Council's recently passed motion related to expanding the range of opportunities, recreation opportunities that are accessible to the public. We will undertake some additional consultations regarding that, which will also provide us with new opportunities for all ages, including older adults.
Thank you. And would that include also the community associations within the, for them to consider that as well, through the chair?
Through you, Mayor Masters, yes, that's correct.
Great, thank you. And just a comment, if I may quickly, I just want to say thank you to the staff. They've been incredible, to the committee, Age-Friendly Committee, but also just a point that when we did the research on the motion, one thing that really surprised me, it says, whereas Canadian seniors are the fastest growing population, and it is projected by 2050 there will be more older people than children for the first time in the world's history. So we are moving in the right direction, and I want to say thank you to everybody to get us there. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Councillor Hawkins.
Mayor Masters, given my own advancing years, I've been concerned that I would have a conflict of interest in voting on this age-friendly motion. But I thought that my experience with age, my personal experience with age, better qualifies me than all other members of council to support this very enthusiastically, which I will do.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to follow your wise advice. Seeing no further questions. Councillor Stevens, do you wish to close it off?
I have nothing else to add.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Clerk, please call the vote.
Thank you. I'll begin with Councillor Stevens, please.
In support.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Moore. Councillor Moore, are you on the line? I'll come back. Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor?
Councillor Hawkins.
In favor.
I'll try Councillor Moore one last time.
In favor.
Thank you. Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Carries unanimously, Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have another delegation? I'd like to call upon Delegation Stu Niebergall. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which you'll have the opportunity to respond to any question members of Council may have for you. Good morning, Mr. Niebergall.
Hello. Yes, this is Stu Niebergall, President and CEO of the Regina and Region Home Builders Association. As I described at last week's Executive Council meeting and in our letter to City Council, the Regina and Region Home Builders Association supports the proposed service agreement fee and development policy. In consideration of your time, I thought I would not repeat what I have already shared, and I simply wanted to make myself available today if City Council had any additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Niebergall. Any questions from Council? Seeing none, I'll thank you very much for your presence today and your availability and ask that you please leave the meeting.
Thank you.
We now consider item CR 21-73, Executive Committee Servicing Agreement Fee and Development Levy. Councillor Findura, could I ask that you please introduce the report?
Mayor Masters, this comes out of the Executive Committee.
Apologies, my script had
Thank you.
someone standing in. Deputy Mayor, take it away.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This matter was extensively considered by Executive Committee. I don't intend to go through that here. It was supported unanimously there. I note two changes to what is basically a status quo report. The first is that a change to the intensification levy, which will make it more fair and will encourage intensification in the city. And the second is there's a new structure for these fees, combining them into one bylaw instead of two. I might ask the city administration if they have any other comments they wish to make with respect to these two changes or with respect to service agreement fees or development levies in general.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Ms. Harlech?
Through you, Mayor Masters, I might just be brief. As Councillor Hawkins indicated, this policy is bringing into one policy all of the information with regards to how the city utilizes development charges in the form of servicing agreement fees, development levies, and intensification levies to fund major infrastructure investments required for new growth and development as per the Planning and Development Act. It provides the administration direction on council's choices related to the management of this and recognizes how we work with industry and the policies with respect to how these fees are charged and allocated. So we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins, your introduction is done. I can move on and see if council wants to speak.
Absolutely. I have nothing further to add.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any questions from council? I do need a seconder before we go to recorded vote.
Councillor Stevens, second.
Thank you. Seeing no questions from council, Mr. Clerk, please call the vote.
Thank you. I'll begin with Councillor Hawkins, please.
In favor.
Councillor Moll. Councillor Moll, are you on the line? Councillor Mancinelli. Councillor Mancinelli, are you on the line?
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Councillor Moll. Record him as absent for the vote. Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Carries 10-0, Mayor.
Thank you. We have another delegation. Thank you. I'd like to call upon delegation Wayne Morski, Ken Budzak, and Tim Reed from the Regina Exhibition Association Limited. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which you'll have the opportunity to respond to questions that the members of council may have for you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Masters. My name is Wayne Morski. I'm the acting chair of the Regina Exhibition Association. With me today is our CEO, Tim Reed, and our chair of our Governance and Nomination Committee, Ken Budzak. The Regina Exhibition Association has just gone through a very interesting year through the COVID situation, and we have maintained ourselves in relevance and have been able to reduce our deficit that we had anticipated. Through the process, we've gone forward with a new nominations for our board of directors, where we had 5 positions open. A couple of them were because of retirement and through succession. And we have gone through close to 40 candidates, and we presented a slate of 5 new candidates. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Tim Reed.
Thank you. Council, does anyone have any questions for the delegations relative to the board appointments? Delegation, as opposed to hopping off the meeting, given that you're presenting on the next item as well, I'm just going to ask that you stay on the line.
Okay.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Okay, we'll now consider CR 21-74 Executive Committee, Regina Exhibition Association Limited Board of Directors. Deputy Mayor, can I ask that you introduce the report?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a recommendation to allow the executive director to exercise the city's proxy rights for the election of Riel membership, board membership. The names that are being put forward in the recommendation are there. I would just note that Riel has gone through an exhaustive and thorough skill set analysis determining the needs of the board and has come forward with a very fine set of names. I would commend it to the council and ask for a seconder.
Bresciani.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Any questions? Anything further to comment in closing? Councillor Hawkins?
Nothing.
Nothing? Mr. Clerk, please call the vote.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll begin with Councillor Hawkins, please.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Moll.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Carries unanimously, Mayor.
Thank you. Next up, we have delegation Wayne Morrissey, Ken Budzak, and Tim Reed from the Regina Exhibition Association Limited, speaking to the 2020 annual report. As you're still on the line and still introduced, I'll skip it, but you do have 5 minutes to speak to the annual report if you like. Please proceed.
We have nothing further to add, Mayor.
Any questions from council on the annual report of the delegation? Seeing none, I'll thank you very much for your presence this morning in order to answer questions and ask that you please leave the meeting now.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
We'll now consider item 21-75, Executive Committee, Regina Exhibition Association Limited, 2020 Annual Report. Deputy Mayor, can you please introduce the report?
Thank you very much, Mayor. I place the recommendation of the Executive Committee before Council to approve the annual report and audited financial statements. We examined this in detail in the Executive Committee. I just want to note here what a fine job Mr. Morski, the board, and Mr. Reed and his team have done this year in facing the challenges posed to Riel by the COVID pandemic. Everything from Iceville, which was a very exciting event for the city in a rather dreary year, to the COVID vaccination clinic that's being run and the temporary hospital at Riel. These are all things that really made a very profound difference in our city, and I salute them for the work they've done, and I'm pleased to present their annual report. Could I ask for a seconder?
Findura.
That's all from me, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions of council? Seeing none, Councillor Hawkins, did you wish to add anything further?
Nothing further.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Clerk, please call the vote.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll begin with Councillor Hawkins, please.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Moll.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Carries unanimously, Mayor.
Thank you. We have more delegations this morning, councillors.
Hello. Hello.
Thank you. Call upon delegation Orion Paradis. Please introduce yourself for the record, organization you're representing, if any. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which you'll have the opportunity to respond to any question members of councils may have for you. Good morning, sir. Please
Sure.
proceed.
Okay, is it ready to go now?
Yep.
Good afternoon, City Councilors and Mayor Masters. I am presenting today in support of motion MM213, Clean Communities. My partner Misty and I have lived in Heritage by a slum landlord's 3 mismanaged properties for the last 20 years. In this time, we have seen zero maintenance on the buildings, caring for the tenants as people. It's all about extracting the most money from the rentals and outsourcing the management of emergencies to police for violence, ambulances for overdoses, and the city waste pickup for extreme amounts of trash. Based on the similar experiences of other property owners I've spoken to who also live next door to poorly managed properties, I think my story represents a microcosm of this reality in Regina. This winter, the garbage got out of control. From November until now, the brown bins have been overflowing, often with needles, and the recycling bins have been filled with trash as well. I tried to get the landlord to clean up for months by asking him directly, but he said it is not his garbage, not his problem. This trash runs the entire length of the side of our home, which borders all 3 properties due to the way 15th Avenue butts up against Toronto Street, and we have to clean up spill into our yard daily. These 3 properties alone generate 15 bins of trash weekly between the brown and blue bins, and I have a hard time keeping faith that my recycling is being processed properly as it's mixed in with all this other trash during pickup. I've been using the City of Regina request system to try and force the landlord to manage his property properly since January, and while the city staff have been empathetic and have worked hard using the tools at their disposal, there are simply not enough teeth in the bylaws to hold slum landlords to account. While the landlord is currently making a token effort now that he is being closely monitored by the bylaw department, he has still never faced a financial penalty for the months he intentionally ignored his own responsibilities and left the surrounding community littered with waste and needles. Although better than it was at its worst, with now weekly pickup, the bins are still regularly overflowing, recycling is still filled with trash, and we continue to have to clean up trash directly from these bins as it blows onto our property. This is all the results I can look forward to after putting in 80 hours of my own time unpaid, following up service requests, having dozens of emails with city employees, multiple phone calls with higher-level city management, as well as several meetings with my local councillor, Dan LeBlanc, and other concerned citizens in the community. For proper context here, it is important to understand that there are a host of other issues also connected to these properties, which are well known by the city's bylaw enforcement department. As well as the waste issues at these properties, I've been dealing with the city and advocating for an 8-step investigation on behalf of the building's tenants, which has so far found multiple issues that need to be addressed, an illegal parking lot being rented out to nurses spread across the 3 lots that the city has currently deemed resolved as they phoned the landlord and he claims not to charge for the spot, and a provincial scan investigation due to injection drug use and sales on the property. As all of these are different departments, there seems to be no one at the city who has the overview of the entire situation, and the various service requests are handled in a confusing, non-transparent, and piecemeal manner from my point of view as a citizen interacting with the system. There is very little I can do as a neighbor about the totality of the challenges these properties represent, but at the very least, I think it's reasonable to expect that those profiting off rental properties in a neighborhood would also have a responsibility to adhere to community waste standards monitored directly by bylaw enforcement officers. However, it seems to me that Regina instead relies on citizen-initiated service requests to do all the heavy lifting here, which puts the responsibility on adjacent property owners who buffer these negative impacts for the rest of the block. This is not only unfair, but unrealistic for those who do not have the time or energy to advocate on their own behalf. The heritage community is at a serious risk of continued decline into full-on urban decay if the city does not support initiatives for positive change and give concerned citizens and city employees the tools to shape the neighborhood into a place that supports decent living standards. Over the last 10 years, residents have witnessed a continuing decline in the waste situation in our neighborhood to the point where it is now common to see piles of trash lying around in alleys. I'm sure you can all agree that if this were your homes and families on the line, you would feel exactly the same frustration and despair that is currently rippling through inner city Regina. There should not be the expectation that we should accept living in trash as the norm.
This is Martha from Office of the City.
Apologies, sir.
Calling to find.
Sorry, apologies. Please continue.
Okay. I'm sure that you can all agree that if this were your homes and families on the line, you would feel exactly the same frustration and despair that is currently rippling through inner city Regina. There should not be the expectation that we should accept living in trash as the norm just because we are in a lower income area of the city. With this in mind, I call upon you to support the motion and turn a corner here. You can help support those of us fighting for decent conditions where we live and give us hope for the future, or you can do nothing and watch as it all gets worse, and all those with the ability to move away as things rapidly collapse into full slum conditions. I, for one, believe that Regina can and should do better. We all matter and we all deserve a clean environment for our families. All of Regina benefits from investing and caring in our most vulnerable neighborhoods. Please support motion MM213. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and apologies again for the interruption on the line.
No worries. No worries.
I do have questions from council. Councillor Shaw.
Hello?
Hi, sorry. I just need to get some clarification because I too was a renter for many years.
Yeah.
When I rented the house, it's my responsibility to keep the lawn mowed, the yard kept clean, my house kept clean. When it came to other responsibilities like the roof needing to be fixed or so on and so forth, that fell on the landlord's shoulders. And I remember living beside people that, you know, the garbage would get in their yard, they wouldn't pick it up and it ended up in my yard. It was my responsibility to pick it up because it came into my yard. So I'm trying to figure out where the reasoning is and how this would fall onto the landlord through you, Madam Mayor. Can you please explain the reasoning behind that for me, please?
Yes. I mean, from my point of view, the responsibility has to lie somewhere. The landlord has a contract with the tenants to properly uphold their part of the contract. If they're not doing that, then he needs to talk to them. He has a contract with the rest of the neighborhood to properly comport his property in regards to the bylaws in the city of Regina. What you're talking about, if these tenants, in this building, these tenants change over frequently. It's always new tenants. I'm never going to be able to deal with them directly. The only person here who can enforce any kind of system is the landlord who is running a business, who is profiting from it beside my home. And all I'm asking for is for him to make sure that the trash is picked up. It's pretty basic.
Right. So in saying that, would that responsibility not fall onto the people that are renting it and not the landlord through you, Madam Mayor?
Well, in our neighborhood and in North Central, that is not the reality. We don't have, a lot of times people are dysfunctional, they have addiction and other problems. They're not going to be dealing with this. So by saying that, what you're saying is that the neighbors are just going to have to deal with it forever because the tenants won't and the landlord doesn't have any responsibility. So the buck stops nowhere, stops in my yard. I clean it up.
Okay, I'm just trying to, and not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just trying to see from a legal point of view. That's all. But
well, I'm not speaking from a legal point of view. I'm speaking from a decency point of view. He comes here and there's trash all over and he walks past it and says it's not his problem. Then he takes the rent money and profits from it. So it's pretty basic.
Right. So just further question to that. Just help me understand. I'm just trying to understand it. I really am. Okay. So maybe the onus would fall onto the landlord to make sure the tenants are doing their due diligence. Through you, Madam Mayor?
Yes, and if they're not,
right,
then he has to pick up the slack.
God, I understand now. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
I agree that they should be doing it, but if they're not, then what happens?
Mm-hmm. Right, I understand. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor LeBlanc?
Yeah, thanks, Orion. I wonder if you can just talk a bit more about your experience of the timeline between you submitting a complaint to the city about garbage until when that garbage gets cleaned up or is enforced. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan, for the question. I actually started talking to the landlord in November about it. There was trash everywhere, ripped open with needles all the time. It got really out of control. He wouldn't do anything about it. On January 30th, I eventually made a service request to the city. I have been in close contact with the bylaw department, and they have given me various reasons why they don't have the effective tools to make him clean up. So basically, from January 30th to now, still today, when they picked up the trash, there was trash laying beside the bins. There was needles laying out the other day. It's just always like that. And it's still not resolved. He hasn't faced any penalty. The city could give him a ticket, but they haven't. And they could make him do something different with his trash bins, like take them away or suspend service or take away his recycling, but they haven't done that either. So it's been like 3 months of trash since I've been in contact with the city. And the initial timelines are 3 weeks to clean up and then another 3 weeks if they appeal. So just for something simple like picking up piles of trash that actually takes 10 minutes, the landlords could delay for up to 6 weeks. And still, I haven't gotten results.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc. Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you. Thank you for coming forward. Just a question. How would, I guess, and I don't know where you exactly live, but did you say the bins are in the alleys or are they in the front of the street? Where are they, through the chair?
I live in a bit of a strange place because I'm beside the general hospital. So the owner owns 3 properties in a row that are on 15th Avenue. I'm on Toronto Street, but there's an alley between our properties instead of a backyard on his places. So basically his 3 backyards are on the side of our house, the entire side of our house. So his trash is on the side of our house. We look out our dining room window and we see his trash bins overflowing every day. That's what we see from our dining room window. It's not behind the road.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so it's the placement of the bins as well. And did you say you have an alley or you don't have an alley, through the chair?
We have an alley behind our house and an alley beside our house. We have 2 alleys adjutting our house, and it's just kind of a strange layout.
Okay. And do any of the alleys get utilized for the garbage pickup, through the chair?
Yes, they all do. It's like alley pickup.
Okay, it's alley pickup. Okay. I guess I've also heard concerns, and I just would like your feedback, is that the placement of the bins, they are, right in front of someone's front window. They're, rather than kind of being at the back. Other cities have bylaws in that. And some of the bins don't get moved in, so they would remain in the alley, then they kind of stay there, or they just remain in the front. Have you?
Well, he puts them against the side of his house, but the back of his building is basically a parking lot, the entire thing. So there's 3 buildings with a dirt parking lot behind them, and then he puts the bins against the building, but you can still fully see them because there's no fence. It's just a bunch of dirt. And so in this case, it's an unfortunate layout that we can always see his trash. What I've been trying to do with bylaw enforcement is get him to at least have to follow the part of the bylaw where your bins are closed, because these bins are never closed. They're always overflowing. And that exacerbates the problem, because then when people come by to dig through the trash, which they do frequently, they rip open all the bags because the trash is already overfilled, and then this then gets spread all around.
Yeah. Do you said bags. You have the blue and the green bins, like the pullouts?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. No, I appreciate you coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Councillor Fundura.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, Mayor Masters. I think it's still good morning. Yep. Good morning. A question to you. Should we even look at, because you talk about landlords, you're talking about tenants, and you talk about how the community or certain landlords or tenants behave in the neighborhood, not really caring about the neighborhood. Should we look at a little more stringent enforcement or penalties on illegal dumping as well? I mean, yeah, if someone dumps a whole bunch of truckload behind someone's garage, I know it's kind of catch-22, but do you think that if someone gets caught or even reported, that there should be a more stronger punishment in that aspect? Because you did talk about the landlords and illegal dumping.
Yes. So illegal dumping is also a big problem. It's not a problem right beside my house, but I also own a business and a rental house a couple blocks down in Heritage. And around there's a lot of illegal dumping. It's certainly something that needs to be looked at. I think part of the problem is the tone. Regina hasn't had effective, meaningful bylaws. By that I mean ones where you get actual money penalties for many years. So the tone that's been set is, well, you can do these things, and while it's technically against the rules, nothing's really going to happen. You can imagine how that would be if parking tickets worked like that. If you parked your car and then you got 6 weeks to move it, and then if you moved it on the last day before the ticket came due, you didn't pay for it. Like, we'd have people parking everywhere. It would be chaos. That's what's currently happening with trash.
Okay, so I hear you clearly that we need to get a little bit more stronger on our littering bylaw and things like that. So okay, next question to you, Mayor Master, is this is a problem. I'm just asking, should like a social services or rentalsmen for the province to get involved in some of these issues to resolve it? It seems like just the city alone, with some of the enforcements, are not able to, in your opinion?
I think that some landlords are essentially running a crisis center without any community support. There's people having overdoses all the time. There are people in physical fights all the time. There's all kinds of problems. So I do sympathize with landlords to some degree. I think this is a bigger scope issue, but yes, I think there needs to be involvement from other sectors of the community, and some of these places need support from the city. There should be sharp boxes on the backs of these buildings. Like, there's sharps all the time everywhere here. So yes, those other departments, this is bigger than just trash, but that trash is what we're focused on today.
Okay. Well, it's creates. It's just one thing leads to another and just keeps moving, spinning. So we need to catch that, and one solution is not going to fix that. So thank you very much.
No, but trash for me at least draws a line. At least you can't dump trash all over the neighborhood, which forces the landlord to be more involved, which then forces them to have more relationship with their tenants and manage the situation. And I think if you're renting a building, you should be managing it, because this comes with a lot of management responsibility, renting to people in these challenge situations.
Thank you. I hear your frustration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fundura. Any further questions from council for the delegation? Hearing none, I'll thank you very much for your presentation this morning, Mr. Curtis, and I'll ask that you please leave the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Council, we're approaching 11:15 for a legislative break. I'm going to suggest that we take it now prior to hearing from anyone else, as it's 11:13. We'll be back at 11:28 to continue hearing the delegations. Thank you. For us. I'd like to call upon delegation Misty Wenzel. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which you'll have the opportunity to respond to any question members of Council may have for you. Good morning.
Okay, good morning. Hi, I'm Misty Wenzel. I'm a business owner in the Heritage neighborhood. I run a dance studio called Fata Dance. I'm also a homeowner, and I own a rental property within the neighborhood. All right, community standards. What does that phrase mean to you? To me, it means empowering community members with a voice to help shape and guide their community into the place they envision, living in harmony with their family and neighbors. An important element of this vision for me is a clean, healthy environment to enjoy with my son and my nieces, who are currently learning to ride their bikes in our back alley, and to run our dance studio in a cared-for neighborhood which cultivates an artistic community within Heritage. However, a healthy and clean environment is not. Whereas most of the properties within Heritage will be decently kept on a block, there are often 1 to 2 that are totally and continuously out of control on the trash front, creating little mini dumps all over our community. This breeds unhealthy and gross conditions as food rots, other trash, and used syringes lie strewn about. This, combined with the small and often overflowing trash bins, creates a situation where there is nowhere for the neighbors to clean up into, even when we want to deal with the mess. My partner and I own a home, our business location, and our rental home, all within Heritage. We've invested in the neighborhood way over 20 years ago. It was affordable, has a great community of people, and it seemed like a good place to start a family. Unfortunately, while we still love our community and have many deep connections here, for the last 10 years, we have watched the trash situation go steadily downhill. We did not used to live in a dump. But as we look around now, it's a harder and harder truth to ignore. We were brought here by short-sighted policy decisions, which set up services that work for the suburbs but do not work in challenged communities. As well, reports from North Central is that the situation is even worse in their neighborhood. Well, I have to ask, then why doesn't the city do something about it? Having experienced firsthand the service request system, I can report that the problem is that our trash bylaws are currently ineffective and have exceedingly long timelines for simple actions like cleaning up excessive trash. This results in abusive landlords and property owners feeling like they have no need to be concerned about the surrounding community. They can do whatever they like as long as they clean up eventually once, right before the deadline, and there will be no financial penalty, there will be no consequence for repeat infractions. When there are literally stiffer penalties for not cutting your lawn properly, one questions where City of Regina's priorities really lie. It really makes me wonder if the city simply does not feel the residents of Heritage matter as much as people in more affluent neighborhoods. I know this isn't a truth many would care to admit, but the double standards are truly hard to take. There is a whole lot I could go on to about lack of affordable, decent housing for Regina's most vulnerable citizens and the resulting conditions that support the slum landlord business model, but it is beyond the scope of today's discussion. In short, I would welcome a safe injection site or a drug rehabilitation center right here, right beside me, that would provide support and hope rather than this trio of mismanaged houses where a slum landlord continues to profit off our most vulnerable citizens. I've had multiple tenants plead to me to advocate on their behalf on multiple fronts, but the main one being holding the landlord accountable regarding safe, humane living conditions. Looking out my window this morning, there was garbage strewn all about, ripped open, overflowing trash bins, which leaves me feeling very discouraged after all the work we've done over the last few months. I think it's sufficient to say that while we can't fix everything at once, and there are a whole lot of very serious issues that need to be addressed, accountable waste management could be a first step in restoring some hope and possible pride in our community. It's time to turn this around, and you can be part of the solution. I really hope that you can support the motion that's before you, making Regina a better community for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from councillors? Councillor Shaw?
Just a quick kind of question. Now, I asked the last delegate to understand how the responsibility falls onto the landlord, and I understood it clearly. It's kind of, if I was the landlord, it's my responsibility to ensure that I have good tenants in the property that's going to maintain the property. So I get that. Bringing in this bylaw, do you feel that this would, I think you made it clear in your statement, but bringing in a bylaw to penalize the landlords, how far do you think we should go with penalizing the landlords and the onus being on the landlord and not the person living in the home? Through you, Madam Mayor.
Well, this particular landlord, and like I have many community members who are living by similar ones, are people that own multiple properties within our neighborhood, and he's not the only one. We live, like the one we live beside. And so there are people who do the bare minimum. Like right now, he's having to do some work on his properties because of the heat that's on him right now. But he does zero to uphold any kind of living standards for people. Like, so I think quite a bit. Like I walk through Broadway, the low-income housing on Broadway there, Boardwalk, and there's people managing the properties. They're picking up trash, they're cleaning up. He is not here doing that ever. So I think quite a lot, actually. I mean, the bare minimum being trash pickup. Like I
I'm not.
I run a business as well, and that's my job to manage my property.
Right, and that's exactly what the last delegate made clear. I just need to make clear in my mind how this can be done, and I completely understand it, and I believe that, yes, in the way that it's worded, that the responsibility falls onto the landlord. In saying that, I'm hoping that this is the first step to maybe more that would help. Do you see this as a significant step in making your community a better place to live through you, Madam Mayor?
Yeah, I do actually, because right now it's not, and it's not like, I want to express our deep concern that this is happening all over our neighborhood. You know, this is not just here beside our house. Like, the alley behind our studio is outrageous. Again, a couple landlords that just do not take care, and they're never there. They never come. And so, yes, I think it would make a massive difference, actually.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much for coming.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none, I'll thank you very much, Ms. Wenzel, for your presentation this morning, and ask that you now please leave the meeting.
Sure. Thanks for your time. Not just here beside our house.
I'd like to call upon delegation Helen Young.
Our studio is outrageous. Again, a couple landlords that just do not take care.
Ms.
And
Young?
they're never there. Never come. And so, yes, I think it would make a massive difference, actually.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
Ms. Young?
Yeah, thanks.
I'd like to call upon delegation Ms. Young. Please introduce yourself for the record and the organization you're representing, if any. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which you'll have the opportunity to respond to any question that members of council may have for you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Helen Yum, and I own a property in the Heritage Community neighborhood. I'm here to speak to the Clean Communities motion brought forth by Councillors Stevens and LeBlanc. So I own a property at 1764 Quebec Street, and it is a neighborhood where the garbage pickup is done in the back alley with individual bins. I support any effort to make areas such as North Central and Heritage cleaner. And so when I look at the back alley of the house I own, and it is a house that's been in our family for 33 years. When my mother passed away, I renovated the house, and I'm renting it out to a very good tenant. But, you know, come spring, the alley conditions really are as serious as the other two speakers have mentioned. There's probably not a square inch in the back alley between 1700 Block Quebec Street and 1700 Montreal that isn't littered with, you know, waste, needles, debris, and that kind of thing. So what I'm interested in, and I'll speak mainly to garbage pickup because that's where most of my experience is. I guess the question for me is, how can we improve the waste collection services in these neighborhoods? Because I think we'll all agree that garbage disposal is a basic service. You know, the alley is full of garbage, and I just want to point out that it's not just the tenants are a problem, but people walk along the alley and they will, you know, they'll litter. And just speaking of some of my own experiences, I've had people that are just walking by in the alley, just empty my bins, and it leaves me in a position where I have to pick up the contents and put them back into the bin. Sometimes people going through the alleys will empty garbage bins because, you know, they're looking for this and that. You know, the broken glass that you see in the alleyways are a hazard to both children and to pets. And there are empty lots along my block, and yes, there is illegal dumping going on. So what I would like the city move towards is some kind of waste disposal system that would be simpler and would work for the neighborhoods. And it is an area where we used to have not individual bins, but we had sort of those community dumpsters. And And I think if I had a community dumpster, I think my life would be easier, or my tenant's life would be easier. I wouldn't have the situation where my bins disappear and I have to go looking for them, or I have to phone into Service Regina with a request that my bin be replaced. I wouldn't have people emptying my bin so that I have to clean up the contents. I think a good analogy with the kind of litter that we see in the back alleys is graffiti. When I see graffiti on the garage door of my property downtown, I spray paint and I cover it up right away. Because graffiti will lead to more graffiti. And I think when you see an alley that's full of litter, I think it's the same thing. I mean, if you see an area that is so littered, I think it's easy for more litter to occur. Now, graffiti is something that I can control. I can buy a can of spray paint and I can clean the back of my garage door. But there's only so much that I can do as an individual to clean up the entire back alley. In my view, I think there are a number of problems that come with litter. I mean, obviously there's the issue of neighborhood blight. I think there's a negative stigma associated when you see an alley that looks like that. It's obviously unsafe because of broken glass and needles. I think there's a pollution that occurs to the local environment. And I think there's a financial cost to the city also to clean it up, not to mention the effect on property values. And I think it's also hard to feel safe or comfortable when you're going to the back alley for any reason, like to take out your recycling bin or to empty your garbage. I do support the motion, and I particularly would like to point out that I do think infrastructure such as community dumpsters may be a better option for the neighborhood. We did have them at one point. I can't remember the exact year that they were phased out, but I do remember them, I think, as recently as 2005. I think that's the gist of my presentation today, and if there are any further questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you for coming this morning. Just, you've raised some really good points. I want to you talked a little bit about promotion or awareness or the word I caught. If there was, the city did a community cleanup or a lead community cleanup, and I know we do already I think it's North Central area, something like that. But if we engage the residents, that kind of thing too, about, keeping our city clean, do you think that would help at all? Through the chair? I think that there are a lot of responsible owners and renters in the Heritage and North Central areas, but I think, as I said, some of the problems just come from people being transient down the back alley. I think that sometimes residents suffer from other issues such as mental health issues, addiction issues, poverty. I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all when it comes to waste collection. I grew up on welfare, so I'm very familiar with living in rental properties in the Heritage neighborhood. But I now own a home and I live in Albert Park. And I don't think what works for me in Albert Park is what would work for the downtown neighborhood. Okay. Good. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Any other questions for the delegation? Seeing none, I'll thank you very much for your presentation this morning, Ms. Young, and ask that you now leave the meeting.
Thank you very much.
We'll now consider item MN 21-3, Councillor Andrew Stevens and Dan LeBlanc, Clean Communities. Councillor Stevens, can you introduce the motion?
I will, thank you. I'll need a seconder, please.
LeBlanc, surprisingly.
Second.
Okay, thank you. I heard two voices there, but I assume I got two. Thank you. So the first thing I want to say is I respect the work of city staff, particularly those in bylaw enforcement and waste collection who handle the problems that we're going to talk about here. So what follows is not an indictment of the work that they're doing. Sometimes it is tireless. I've had a lot of engagement since especially COVID started with bylaw enforcement. This is a citywide issue, and it's a hope that we can address some of the problems identified in the in the motion, as well as what we've heard from delegates through policy change and investment. I think my biggest issue with the status quo in some respects is how reactive it is. And this is meant to make our response far more proactive. So there's three parts to this. One is that we improve and enhance existing bylaws and their enforcement. So I'm not actually asking for any new bylaws. I'm asking for a more rigorous enforcement of what we have. The second is to identify service levels and supports based on the need of certain communities. And this is tough because we have a system-wide approach which makes sense. But what we're seeing based on some of the data that I've shared with other councillors is that there are problem areas, if you will, and I think we need to identify services specifically for those areas. And finally, it is about community engagement and empowerment. If we think about community cleanups and so on, that happens at the community and a community association level. I think when we get back to the areas most effective, this is really a response to my own experience at Heritage, Cathedral, and North Central especially. But we can see that the communities that make up wards 3, 6, and 7, based on bylaw enforcement data from 2019, are areas that are of greatest concern. But I also want to contextualize this in our focus on the underutilized land strategy, infill development, and investing in communities, and specifically inner city revitalization. So this is part of that conversation about how do we attract people to live in these areas and to build and make lives for themselves. Again, this is a very focused problem, and I think it needs a focused solution. We have data from, for instance, the MBN benchmarks that suggest that most compliance and issues with bylaw enforcement are resolved. So we're really talking about specific areas and problems that need the most attention. One of the questions that has been asked is who's responsible? Well, that depends, but I would say that ultimately when it comes to a problem on private property, the buck stops ultimately with the property owner, and we've heard that person described as a landowner. The departments involved with this motion include bylaw, fire, solid waste, and this becomes complex when we're thinking about public and private property and how this functions. I think also some experiences that I witnessed at the Regina Appeals Board prompted me to write this. So we would see weeks or months past before the city could be in a legal authority, for instance, to take garbage from someone's property. And so the whole enforcement process governed by the Cities Act and what we're capable of doing can be quite restrictive. What we're asking for ultimately here is what can we do and what's the extent of the law that we're able to identify and then actually deploy in our enforcement. And I talk about summary offense ticketing, increasing penalties, and a more active use of prosecution, both to resolve a problem, but also as a means of punishment. I've been quite blunt with that. To administration, we had a conversation about this yesterday about what's in the works. Points 5 and 6 here talk about community cleanups and needle drop-offs. I understand now that there's some work being done in this area. Can you comment on that?
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Stevens. Through you, Mayor Masters. So the items 5 and 6, administration would recommend those items being pulled out of this motion. And the reason for that is item 5, additional needle drop-off bins, is incorporated into a motion, and that motion is MN 20-24, Addictions Crisis. And there is a report that is expected to return in Q3 of 2021. I checked, that report will be coming forward. And regarding item number 6, community cleanup initiatives, that is being done by Lori Shaley's area in our community services. That is one more area that is included in all of this work. They are a very important part of this work also. And that report is coming to Council Q2 or Q3 in 2021. And that will consider options for providing additional financial and programming options regarding community cleanups.
Okay, thank you. So my recommendation, as per administration's comments, is that we do pull those, considering those reports are coming forward. I will ask the seconder of the motion if they're okay with that. Maybe they can comment on that in their remarks. I understand also that for B and C, there's some complexity to that. Can you comment on the state of that work?
Certainly. Thanks, Councillor, through you, Mayor Masters. The report regarding 4B and C, we have a report, administration has a report coming forward on the funding model around solid waste and curbside collection. So the report coming back that would provide information on both B and C could very much, depending on the decision out of that report, could very much impact the funding model. So in conversation with our solid waste team, if the report out of the motion that is in front of council today, if that report were to come forward at the end of Q3 2021, it may impact the timing of the funding model report only, which would then come, I would say, in Q1 of 2022. Just because of the timing, being able to make the amendments and look at the impact in the funding model, we would bring that forward. That actual report on the funding model will not impact 2022 budget, as it would be coming forward in the 2023 discussion. So the timing of that will not impact that the budget process for 2022.
Okay, so just to be clear, that if this were pushed back, it wouldn't be possible to actually alter these service levels, fees, et cetera, until 2023 if we're following the budget cycle, correct?
Through Mayor Masters, that is correct. If this report or 4B and C out of this report came in Q1 of 2022, it would not be in time for the 2022 budget.
Okay, thank you. I'll give that some thought. I might have some additional remarks or changes during my closing comments, but I'll yield the floor to other councillors to talk about the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Actually, Mr. Onright, could you speak more broadly in terms of the motion?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Masters. So Councillor Stevens broke the report down, and that is correct. We have bylaw enforcement would be involved in this work. They are currently involved on the enforcement side of the waste bylaw. We also have our solid waste team that's involved in this. So items 1, 2, and 3 in the motion are bylaw related. Changes to those bylaws to put more rigor around those bylaws can come forward in Q3 of 2021. I've confirmed that with our bylaw manager and with Mr. Weary. Item 4A would be a part of the decisions being made around 4B and C when the report comes forward. And then item number 5 and item number 6, as I had indicated earlier, administration's recommendation is that they be removed, as there is work currently being done and reports coming back in Q2 and Q3 of this year, which will address both of those items in the motion. Thank you.
And Mr. Onright, if I heard you correctly, that you were asking for more time frame than currently is what's being requested in here for 4B and C to Q1 of 2022 due to the report coming on solid waste in Q4 of 2021?
Through you, Mayor Masters, that is correct. That would be ideal. If we could continue with the work being done on the funding model, the food and yard waste organics report that is due, our intention would be we would still be bringing the food and yard waste organics report in Q4 of 21. But depending on the timing, what is agreed to, whether the 4B and C comes in Q3 or whether it can come in Q1 of 22 after the funding model. That's the change that would happen there.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Mancinelli.
Thank you for that. That actually took care of a big part of my first questions about timelines and availability to achieve. I'm wondering if I could propose maybe a friendly amendment to what's written in removing the language surrounding landlord and offenders in point 4. I'd just like to say that this doesn't just happen for landlords and offenders. This occurs in my area too at sites, and I do have repeated service requests, so if that would be agreeable to the authors.
You're looking under item number 1, where it speaks to identifies a strategy of increasing fines and prosecution efforts where they've clearly identified in brackets of landlords and offenders?
Correct. I don't think we have to be pointed of landlords and offenders. I think this is a problem in our community and can just reflect that in the wording if that's okay.
Councillor Stevens?
The outcome is the same, so I'm fine with it, but I would ask the seconder, whoever that was, if they're okay with it. I believe they have to consent as well.
Councillor LeBlanc?
I'm fine with that, with removing everything in 1 that's in brackets there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. My next point would be, I'm wondering if I could propose an amendment that we would enter another point under 4 that would come back when they're returning with the report on the use of video monitoring footage for bylaw prosecution. This whole proposal is to get more adherence to our dumping bylaws and everything else. I know we have a lot of technology that's been added across our city as well as residents in their own homes. And I'm wondering if they do provide the footage at will, if we can use that footage to help keep our city cleaner. Do I have to make an amendment for that and have a vote on it, or how would that be done?
Mr. Ongett, can you speak to that idea?
Through you, Mayor Masters, I'll ask Mr. Weary or Miss Andrea McNeil Wilson to comment on that. If I can just add one more comment. Bylaw enforcement has requested their report come in Q4 of 2021. So we would try to align that at the beginning of Q4 2021, as well as the rest of the work within the motion, depending on what's agreed to in timing. But Q4 instead of Q3.
Thank you. Mr. Worry, can you speak to the use of video footage for enforcement purposes?
Yes, video footage is admissible evidence in a prosecution, so it could be used. Just be a question of how that evidence is going to be gathered. I wasn't completely clear on what Councillor Mancinelli was suggesting, but certainly there could be cameras that, and I believe there might already be cameras on some of our collection trucks. So the operating area can maybe speak to that. I'm not aware. We've not used any evidence from any video that the operating area currently gathers because we haven't had prosecutions. That hasn't been something that we've used, and there are some legal rules around it, which would be technical evidentiary pieces as to whether that type of evidence would be admissible in a specific case. But in terms of sort of a video monitoring of an alley or something like that, that to me might be more useful. Again, we likely will see who's tipping over some of the when those containers are wheeled out, anonymous people coming by and turning them over, and so it might help us with determining sort of some of the mischief patterns, but beyond that, it's not something that we have currently used as a surveillance technique. So could certainly, we could review that as part of this motion. I don't think we need something specific from council on that. That's something that we can look at as part of the report that comes back.
Thanks. I guess just to be a bit more specific, what I'm thinking of is people who drive up in their vehicle and dump off at the site in the inner city or next to the rail tracks and drive away. I know many residents have provided that kind of footage both on Facebook, and if we could have a stream for taking that in and prosecuting on it as part of this, I think that'd be appreciated.
Yes, if we get a license number, that would be very helpful.
And maybe a way to inform the public on how we can provide that. I guess my last question is within City Council's authority to implement any type of a deposit and disposal stream for mattresses? I noticed it's a large thing. There are provisions for milk cartons. Anytime I leave the city, if I'm on a grid road, on Armour Road or Pinkey Road, beside the tracks, I can always see a mattress. Is there something we can do proactively while we're looking at this issue for a problem like that?
Mr. Onrait? Oh, apologies, Councillor Mancinelli.
Oh, that's fine. I'm done.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Masters. I'll just add a couple of comments around the video monitoring. We do have video cams on our fleet. The challenge is to catch a person in the actual action of doing something. So that's one piece of it. We have used, and I will speak to this because I had bylaw enforcement within my portfolio a few years ago, and we did use video monitoring on illegal dumping site, a specific one. And what we found was as soon as those that were illegally dumping found out the video cam was there, they would either shoot the lens out, find a way to knock the camera off, and the camera was up quite high. So we just need to keep that in mind. That's not always, it may work for a day or two, but eventually someone will deal with it in another manner. Can I just get the last part of your question repeated?
I think I was talking in reference to a lot of the dash cams and mobile digital equipment people have nowadays, people driving up, dumping, and maybe getting a plate number and providing a stream so people can provide that information or know how they can provide that information if they witness or capture it.
Okay. Thank you. So that would, if it's illegal activity in that regard, so either it comes through the city's stream to be dealt with through bylaw, or it could be dealt with maybe through RPS. The question about mattresses and charges, I'm going to ask Mr. Doney to comment. I know we have been doing some work around that and how we're handling things at the landfill.
Through you, Mayor Masters. So the landfill diversion is part of Waste Plan Regina's longer-term plan. And in this year's update of Waste Plan Regina, we have that outlined in approximately 2025 to advance the landfill diversion strategies, and that will include many things, including mattresses.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mancinelli, before you go, I just need a little bit of clarification. Are you looking for some response in terms of video surveillance from bylaw enforcement, from Mr. Weary's report that's coming in Q4 of 2021?
Yes. As we come back with this, I guess a lot of people are aware of the dumping and they are filming it and they keep on submitting it to Facebook. And I've had people ask if they can submit it to try to get a change on this problem. So if we're coming back with information, I'd like to provide that back to the public with some type of an easy way for them to filter that through and have influence on the problem.
Thank you. Mr. Weary, is that something that would come in your report, not necessarily this motion?
Yes, it probably is best coming in my report given the nature of the request and it might be something that we need to brief council on privately first. So, but yes, I think it can be separated out. It's perhaps a broader issue that could be applied in a number of different contexts beyond just this particular motion.
Councillor Mancinelli, is that okay? We'll leave it off of this motion and just allow it to be incorporated into Mr. Warery's report.
Just to have it looked at, I'm fine with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mancinelli. Councillor Stadnichuk.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. Through you, question to administration. I'm trying to, I kind of would like to get an understanding of the problem of garbage and dumping as an issue under the community standards bylaw versus other kinds of issues. So how does bylaw enforcement deal with a landlord who does not maintain the property in other ways, like grass cutting, trees that need pruning, things like that? Is it do you deal with, is it the same kinds of problems, or is garbage just a more difficult issue to enforce? Through the chair.
Thank you. Mr. Worry?
Yes, mostly what we are dealing with in bylaw enforcement, community standards bylaw, the ones that we're in the best position to enforce are violations that are connected to a property, because then it is the responsibility of the owner of the property to deal with it. And we do have special enforcement powers to compel the property owner to deal with it. And if they don't deal with it, the city can then deal with it and then add the charges of the remedy to the tax roll, which the property owner, of course, is required to pay. What's important to keep in mind with garbage and waste collection is that this is all regulated under the waste management bylaw, which was passed in 2012. So it's important to differentiate. Community standards is a bylaw of more broad application. The specifics of how the city manages waste collection, recycling, illegal dumping, some of that is contained in, most of that is contained in all the rules are in the waste management bylaw. And then there was also a third reference, I believe, to clean property. And that's where the provisions about littering on public property are contained. So again, those are a little bit harder to enforce because we need someone to witness littering on a public property. So that would be potentially people tipping over our collection containers in the alleyway. But there's also provisions in the waste management bylaw that deal with that as well. So it's important for council to keep those two separate. There are ways where we could do it under community standards, but it probably is more correctly enforced through the waste management.
Okay, thank you so much for that. That helps. So my second question through the chair is just to, in terms of the waste, the report that's going to be coming dealing with solid waste and options for waste. So I guess point 4 of the motion, I really strongly support this and think that maybe there is not, that we have to think outside the box, that it's not just one approach, the individual garbage dump bins for the entire city, that maybe we do have to think differently. So I guess I don't have a question. I just want to say that I support that in particular, the point number 4 in the motion. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stadnichuk. Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you to administration. On point number 6, it asks to increase financial and service support for community cleanup initiatives in high need areas. What is the amount that's put into right now for the community cleanups in these areas? Chair.
Through you, Mayor Masters, I'll ask Ms. Shaley to comment.
Through you, Mayor Masters, right now we don't provide funding to community associations specific to cleanups, but rather we provide in-kind services. And so just as an example, through the Parks Department, we'll provide chippers and staff to help with the chippers. Our solid waste area also provides some in-kind support. And so part of this project that we're undertaking is to provide a consistent level of service to community associations, and it would be an in-kind contribution of city support.
Thank you. I remember maybe at least a year, maybe two, there was a report that came to council, and it was in regards to, it might have been North Central, Councillor Stevens maybe would know, but where the city hired individuals to go into the community and clean up. Can I just get a response on that program and if it's still going through the chair?
Through you, Mayor Masters, I'll ask Mr. Weary to comment because I believe the program you're referring to is one that is utilized by our bylaw enforcement.
Go ahead, Mr. Weary.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Masters. Mr. Onrait's correct. That program still is in existence, called Atascada. It's been, in our view, a very long-standing program where we do work with community Indigenous organization to provide this service, which is mostly about collecting bulk items in alleys, specifically in wards 3 and 6. So that's it's a program that's been in place for many, many years with the city, and it's something that continues. If that's the one that Councillor Bresciani was inquiring about.
Yes, that's the one. Is there a cost through the chair?
Yes, there is. It's something that's we enter into contracts, on an ongoing basis with the organization, and I believe the value of the contract, when I last checked, is under $100,000 a year.
Okay.
Correction, around 70. I'm advised it's about $70,000 a year.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to ask Councillor Stevens or Councillor LeBlanc what they mean by increased financial and service support. Like, what were they thinking in that area? If I could just ask that question through the chair.
I could put one comment in. So one thing I've heard, Councillor Bresciani, I know the North Central Community Association and occasionally Heritage at set points in the year will fundraise or pay out of pocket to bring the large dumpster-style bins that we're talking about here into the neighborhood for a few days. And that's an opportunity for people who don't have access to trucks or other ways to get to the dump, for example, to come and dump old mattresses and get rid of them in that sort of way. So one of the things I have in mind is maybe the city could foot the bill on something like that. I think maybe a more ambitious one that could play with it is that rather than, I would say, relying exclusively or mostly on neighborhood volunteers to do a sort of, cleanup of the park or back alleys, that city staff could also be involved in that, potentially to a greater extent than Ms. Shalley has spoken about. So those are the sort of things I have in mind that might come back as recommendations in the report.
Councillor Bresciani, can I clarify? Are you speaking to point number 6?
Yes.
Okay, and I do believe we have a report coming forward on that specific issue in Q3 of 2021 already.
Okay, great. So, so Councillor LeBlanc, I like that idea where, we can increase maybe getting some bins in areas, certain time of the year, especially. And I'll give you an example that I think would benefit the whole city, and maybe could be increased in the inner city areas that you're talking about. But I think we all want a clean city, and to ensure we keep the beautification here. So I think that would be beneficial, absolutely, to get some of the big low-risk bins in the communities to drop off garbage, at least if it's, once a year or whatever in the neighborhoods. So I want to ask a little bit further, because this is talking about clean communities. And as Councillor Mancinelli stated, we have that problem out here too. it might be a different problem, but it is about dumping garbage sometimes developers, the big bins that are there, someone comes and throws in chairs and TVs and things like that. So there's two things that I want to ask about to administration in this report if it comes back, or about bin placement. And we're going to be having and I would absolutely agree, when you go down some of those alleys that you see, the bins are overflowing, and it would be, again, how would we, are we going to do this even when we think we're going to maybe add a third bin? But we heard it from one of the individuals that spoke today about kind of the bin placement as well. Would this report coming back consider bin placement? Because I have alleys in my area that are not utilized for garbage pickup. And that is a concern that I've heard from residents. What happens is, especially in row housing, that these bins sit in the front yard and just stay there. Absolutely just stay there. So is this something that could be considered in this report coming back through the chair?
Through you, Mayor Masters. So just for clarification, Councillor Bresciani, are you referring to the report item number 6 that is coming back, or are you referring to the report that will bring information on 4B and C?
It would be, well, it could be B and it could be C, I guess.
So just for further clarification, are you referring to large dumpster bins? Or are you referring to the residential bin system that is currently in place?
Residential.
So through you, Mayor Masters, I'll ask Mr. Doney to comment, but if I understand the motion that's in front of council now, and 4B and C, the actual location of the bins is not that part of the motion, but I'll ask Mr. Doney if, and I know this has been brought up before on placement of bins, whether we are going to have that included in the bigger report that is coming forward through the funding model and curbside collection.
Through you, Mayor Masters. So as part of the food and yard waste pilot program, we are collecting data to see if there are any concerns with a third bin being on properties. So that will come back as information to council. The existing waste management bylaw is clear on where bins should be placed, kind of under the care of homeowners. But then, of course, the enforcement side of things is the conversation today.
Thank you. So I want to know, when would this be coming back, the bin placement then? Is because, again, my point is that we have bins that are placed on front lawns that, and again, because cars are parked on the street, there's no garages. So they just stay on the front lawn by the sidewalks, and some are on the sidewalks.
Okay.
Can this be part of this motion coming back? If it would be added on, to enforce bin placement? I don't know if we even have a policy on bin placement, do we? Through the chair?
Through you, Mayor Masters. I would ask that we keep that separate, as Mr. Doney has indicated, through the food and yard waste pilot project. We have gathered and we are getting feedback regarding number of bins, placement of bins. I'll also ask Ms. Howard-Luck to comment, because I know her area is doing some work with builders and developers.
Thank you, Mayor Masters, through you. Yes, Councillor Bresciani, it is something that's come up with the development industry, and we are working with the development industry right now looking at neighborhood design standards, and we've broken it down, and this is one of the issues that we've flagged that we want to talk to the industry about on how we can make it work for both the operating areas, the developers, and the homeowners when we're designing neighborhoods. So that conversation is underway, and we'll bring forward, or we'll look at that and bring something forward if we need council's approval. Otherwise, we know it's an issue and we'll address it through our standards.
Okay, yeah, that was my next question as to what developers are doing to provide. Okay, and sorry, how would that come back through the chair?
Through you, Mayor Masters. So we'll work. We work very closely with Mr. Onright's area. Mr. Doney's involved in those conversations. So the design standards are something that administration approves. So we would look at that knowing that council has concerns around this, as do we and homeowners and the developers. So we'll be looking at how to address it, and I'll provide a memo to council on how it got addressed.
Thank you. That would be great. So just to go back to my first question, the bins that are on the grass now in the front that are don't get moved, can bylaw then, like, would this be part of this clean bylaw where they could actually be moved to the back? Because is there not something that these are supposed to be picked up in the alley through the chair?
Through you, Mayor Masters, I'll ask Mr. Doney to comment, and then maybe Mr. Weary after that.
Through you, Mayor Masters. So as a new development is built out, we would move the pickup into the alleys once the construction is reduced. Doing that too early is challenging from a waste pickup perspective because there's a significant amount of construction. So the preference is to move it to the alleys. However, as a development is being built, it may be in the front streets to reduce any impact.
Thank you. So I can forward information to, I guess, city staff, because there's been many streets that are finished and completed that are still having their bins in the front. And it really does cause problems because cars are also parked there. There's no garages, so they park in front of the cars, and I've had many complaints on that. So I will forward that on my own. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Councillor Zakidniak.
Okay, thank you. So I just would like to state that I fully support this motion. For anyone who spent time in these areas of our city, I think we know that some of the waste problems that we have that are, yes, throughout the city, they're amplified even more so in these areas. And I think these steps are good initial steps to attempt to address a very serious and long-term problem. I don't think it's easy to address, but I think these are some very solid first steps to take. I do have a question for administration related to point 4C. No matter whenever that comes back to council, my question is, can administration consider how to best balance the needs of these communities with waste diversion best practices as well? So my question is, it may be worth considering when we're talking about community dumpsters for garbage. Is it community dumpsters for everything, or community dumpsters solely for garbage and then individual for composting and recycling? And I don't have the answer, but I'm just thinking it may be worthwhile considering a variety of options, what will best meet our needs for waste diversion and ensuring a clean communities. So that's my question for administration, please.
Through you, Mayor Masters, yes, we can incorporate that into the report that comes back. We will look at a variety of options, and share that information with council in the report.
Okay, wonderful. That's all I have. Thank you to Councillor Stevens and Councillor LeBlanc for bringing forward this important motion.
Thank you, Councillor Zakiniak. Councillor LeBlanc.
Thank you. So my desire to bring this really flowed from door knocking in Heritage last fall, and then it was amplified when Orion, who you heard from, reached out to me in January. So as you heard from Orion, he's been really bird dogging the city for coming up 4 months to get the back alley, which is beside his house, or rather on the side of his house, cleaned up. And in speaking with Orion, and he amplified it today, he's had a heck of a time doing that because there's garbage back there. He files a complaint. Landlord's got 15 days. And then, on day 14 and a half, it gets cleaned up. Day 15, it happens again. He does it again and again and again. And here he is with the same poor service level, I would say, from the city as he had several months ago. And what that screams out is an ineffective regime that we have for enforcing bylaws. That's not the fault of our bylaw enforcement office, that's the fault of our bylaws. And so that's what we need to change here. I've had a rather disconcerting experience with several Heritage residents since taking on this job, which is I try to help them with this. The bylaws seem ineffective, and eventually I say to them, you really should just hire a lawyer because the city's bylaws are ineffective and you need to go against these folks in court. And that's a bad option. People shouldn't have to go to court to not have garbage blown on their lawns. I want to say that the bylaws we're proposing here have a very similar foundation to ones we've passed this year. So one's about, not mowing your lawn, unwanted weeds. That makes perfect sense. It makes sense to do it here. Same with the grading issues, which Councillor Bresciani brought up. People shouldn't have to go to court to get grading fixed when their neighbors make an error and go through all that time and expense. The city should hop in and do that. I say that's the same here. I heard administration's concerns about 3 subsections of this motion, so 4, B, and C, as well as 5 and 6, and wanting to either remove or push those down the road. I am opposed to removing 4, B, and C, as well as 6. And the reason is because there's a very particular part of those that I think is important to discuss as part of this, and that's a higher service level for high needs areas. So 4B and C use the language higher than average garbage, and 6 uses high needs areas. I think we need to have a serious discussion as council of whether it's appropriate to have different service levels in high needs areas than we do in low needs areas. I don't think that turns on a ward by ward basis. I have several neighborhoods in my ward I don't think are a high needs area, but I have one that definitely is, and I think Heritage ought to be prioritized, and we ought to have a discussion about that. So with that in mind, I would move a motion to amend this document to remove point 5 from it in light of Mr. Onright's suggestion or recommendation in that piece, and would be looking for a seconder to remove point 5.
Councillor LeBlanc, one moment, please.
I believe I can simply consent to that and have it removed.
Thank you. Thanks. That's what we're looking for.
Thank you. So 2 final comments. One is just with respect to how these problems come about. So I want to suggest that although these are in low-income neighborhoods, or the particular ones we're focusing on here, North Central and Heritage, I think we have to be careful to not demonize the folks who live there. So we've talked about mattresses and that being an issue, and we all know unless you have a big vehicle or cash to pay someone to bring that to the dump, it's hard to get rid of a big mattress. So that's not because people don't care about their communities, that's because they don't have the means to get rid of it. And I think the city needs to step in and do something about that to make sure these are clean areas. The final comment I'd make is, I take Councillor Stevens' point. I think he's right that at some point the fines have to be focused on disciplining or punishing landlords who are making our communities dangerous or dirty. But I think our real focus on this needs to be on the people who are neighbors to these properties. So if you think about Orion, Misty, and Helen, those are folks who have garbage blowing into their yard. We've heard from people from North Central who have needles in the back alley where they're trying to teach their kid where to bike. I think those are the people this bylaw is principally focused on, is not who caused the problem, but what's the impact of the problem. And the impact's huge, as we've heard. So I'd be looking for your support on this. Thank you.
Just one moment, Council. Councillor Fundura.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. Question. If someone calls in on noticing that someone has dumped something in the alley and it gets reported, where does it go? Then I'll give an example. Where does it go? How is that? What's needed for prosecution? Someone like a police or bylaw has to notice that. How does a resident have that authority? Do they have to go to court then? How does that process work? Mayor Masters?
Through you, Mayor Masters, I'll ask Mr. Weary to comment.
Thank you. We would have to receive a complaint, and we would have to investigate the complaint. We would gather evidence from whoever witnessed what occurred and determine whether we have enough evidence to substantiate a charge and proceed in something like that where it's illegal dumping. That is not something that's connected to a property. So it would be, if there was sufficient evidence, there would be a charge and it would go to bylaw court. So, and when you go to bylaw court, the standard of proof to prove the charge before a justice of the peace is proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the criminal standard, which is a very high standard. So it is not always easy to have enough evidence to prove the case, but that would be part of the review that we would do as far as getting the complaint from the resident, determining if there's enough evidence with that alone or whether we need additional evidence. And if we can gather that, then we can proceed. Should also caution, at the present time, Council, our bylaw court has been closed because of COVID and likely will remain closed for potentially a number of months while the numbers are high. Other courts in the province are still operating, but the provincial government and court services have determined that bylaw court is closed completely. So it has been for a number of months now. So that does limit our ability to take charges forward. A lot of things are being held in abeyance right now.
Thank you for that, Mayor Masters. So when does the police get involved in this, or do they?
Mayor Masters, the police would depend on the type of complaint. If it's something that has a criminal aspect to it, the complaint comes into Service Regina, then it would be, we could assess whether it's properly a bylaw complaint. If it is something that looks more like a criminal complaint, then we would potentially refer it to the police service to review and determine if they would investigate it. So they can also report it directly to RPS as well if they want, and it could be routed the other way depending on the nature of it. It's hard to say. To answer Councillor Fundura's question, it's a lot will depend on the specifics of individual incidents and violations. So it could be either or.
Okay, thank you. So maybe to Mayor Masters, as the report's going into Q3 or further on, are we within those reports? Are we discussing all these issues with social services and with rentalsmen, with the government, and that part of? As I asked, I did make a question to the delegation. Are we involved ourselves? Because I mean, by ourselves as a city, I don't believe that we are able to solve this issue. Have we been having a conversation or even making some kind of a plan with the government to solve some of these issues? Is that on the radar, or is that going to be part of the report, or Mayor Masters?
Through you, Mayor Masters. So we're in ongoing discussions with RPS, social services, fire and protective services. Those conversations are often, so it will not be a part of this particular report, but we do talk about all of the concerns you've mentioned, Councillor Fundura, and there are adjustments made. Each one of these situations needs to be handled separately, but it's between those agencies. Lori Shaley's area, our community services area, are also involved. So I would say that no, it's not a part of this report, as we're already doing that work.
Okay, Mayor Masters, question that leads to that is if a bylaw, someone complains in the neighborhood, and the bylaw enforcement sends a letter to the owner of a rental property, then I know through the bylaw that the owner of the property has to clean up, even though the tenants have made a mess or just dumping stuff in their yard. I'm not sure. Do we know if I was trying to check and I couldn't get the answer from the government on, is there such thing as a lease signed from a landlord to a tenant that he or she or they are responsible? So if there's a bylaw letter sent out or bylaw notice, it goes to the tenant, landlord gets informed, but starts there first. Is there such a thing?
Through you, Mayor Masters, I'll ask Mr. Weary to comment.
Mayor Masters, it's to answer Councillor Fundura. I'm not sure that each lease arrangement would be different, but there's probably some language in most lease agreements. Haven't signed one for a few years and didn't when I used to. I never read them that closely. That if damage is caused by the tenant, then the landlord will have a remedy under the lease to recover that. So I think most lease arrangements will have something like that, and similar to when you rent a car. If you get a parking ticket, you're responsible. The ticket comes to the rental company, and then they pursue the driver who actually incurred the ticket. So sort of an analogy, but I haven't reviewed that issue specifically, but that's the best advice I can offer this afternoon.
Okay, thank you. There's one more question, then I'll make a comment. Are we is the Anascada the group that cleans up, that we have a monetary that we provide to this group? Is it once a year? It comes to budget. How do we review that? Can we increase? Because this is a good program. It involves the community, it involves some youth that need to repay some of the restitution. Are we increasing anytime soon the funds, or are we debating that? Is that coming up, or where are we at with this?
Through you, Mayor Masters, I'll ask Mr. Weary or Mr. Doney to comment.
Mayor Masters, I can speak to that. This amount that we talked about previously is something that's comes up as part of our annual operating budget. So if there was a decision on the part of council to increase that amount, that would be something that could be discussed at budget time.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Mayor Master, just a few comments. I was involved in several different areas of the even in 5 here, other areas where a resident noticed there was a truck that came in, dumped, and left, and then the truck came back again, and more than an hour or so, 2 hours later, back up to the same pile and trying to dump again. The report was made, and from there on, because the owner was out too quick, didn't take any pictures, so that evidence is gone. So that's when I was questioning about if we can have. I know that complaint driven. I don't want to just point finger on someone, but things like that are happening all the time, and residents are getting very frustrated. So now, because it's in the back alley, it's not the residents' problem. Now it becomes a city problem. We have to clean that up. So that's one comment. Second comment I made, that just to discuss things with people, with owners and all that, wondering, there are many empty lots or in the areas that, why couldn't we put Laura's bins in these yards? I mean, that's a fairly loaded thing, but why can we put Laura's bins into the areas where even Councillor LeBlanc or Stevens mentioned about, and I understand individuals don't have vehicles. I've held many times when I take things out to landfill. To have that service, I know you don't want to overrun the neighborhood with Laura's bins. I know there are cleanup days or whatever, however you worked it. I was involved in a few of those. But is that something, this is just a comment, no answer for that. But having some kind of a service of that sort that would happen more often than not, and maybe we could stem some of that, illegal dumping, or if people have a problem with mattress or things like that. That's one. Let's see what we got here. We are working. Okay, just gonna one more thing in here. And then again, too, I just want to make I understand the impact and how that works. We are involved in. This is our responsibility as residents of Regina, all of us. And I know some areas are more than others, and we as humans, I think, at fault some of the things that we do. But I need to caution that we need to be careful not to single out or point fingers at one particular group, one particular business. I don't think that is good for business. And two, at the same time, we are looking at the landlords on affordable housing. We're looking at affordable housing and all that. So that's some, in that sense, group of that sorts are helping within the affordable housing as well. I understand there are some housing that, you need to go after, which I agree. But at the same time, we need to be, cautious about not to point fingers at one group or the other, or punish one group or the other. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fundora. I'm going to circle back around because now I'm confused. So I can only assume virtually you may be as well. Item number 5 on the notice or the motion itself has been removed by friendly amendment. There was a request from administration based upon a report coming forward that was going to on the schedule already for Q4. Councillor Stevens was amenable as the mover. As the seconder, Councillor LeBlanc would not support. He wanted it to come earlier, which then I believe affects the time frame for 4B and C. Mr. Onright, do I have that correct?
Through Mayor Masters, so administration can bring the report in Q4 with the change of taking out item number 5. The reason we're asking for Q4 is the amount of work that is involved in this. This current motion is not in any work plans for 2021. So we are asking for some extended time to bring the report forward. When we first had the discussion, we were thinking that item number 6 would be addressed through a report that is already coming forward. Councillor LeBlanc is asking for item number 6 to stay in, which really moves me to request Q4 of 2021, not Q3.
Councillor Stevens, are you willing to make this a friendly amendment in terms of the time frame?
Yes, so all I need is my seconder to agree to Q4 instead of Q3 for all the work that remains.
Councillor LeBlanc?
That's fine. That's fine with me. Thank you.
And Mr. Onrait, can I just clarify? Are you okay with 4, B, and C staying where they are, given the reports that you're bringing forward? You'll be able to speak to them a bit?
Yep.
Thank you. So, Councillor Stevens, did you wish to close anything off on this one?
No, I think everything's been addressed, and thank you for the recap. I hope everyone knows now what we're voting on. Thank you.
You bet. Council, I'm going to have City Clerk call the vote.
Thank you, Mayor. I will begin with Councillor Stevens, please.
In support.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Hawkins.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli. Councillor Mancinelli, are you on the line? Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor Moore.
In favor.
For the benefit of those watching, Councillor Mancinelli has sent an email indicating that his microphone is stuck, but he votes in favor. Mayor Masters?
In favor.
Carries 11-0, Mayor.
Council, based upon the time, I need an indication from you if we'll be going past 1:30 today.
Mayor Masters, I suggest we adjourn for a brief lunch break now and then continue following that. Thank you.
There's no time limits for anyone as it relates to this afternoon?
Mayor Masters, Hawkins, I'm concerned about the continual need to go past our firm deadline. I think this is just not good practice. We've now been meeting as a council for probably more than 16 hours in the last 24.
Point taken.
Can I would like to chime in as well. I have another meeting in a couple hours, and I need to prepare for that meeting as well. So I would seek adjournment if we can do it at 1 o'clock and reschedule the rest of the items that are needed to be done.
Councillor Bresciani, the meeting today is scheduled till 1:30. Is that amenable?
Okay. Yes, yeah.
Okay, there are
Mayor
matters.
Masters,
Oh,
I may be able to help a little bit. A number of the remaining items come right out of executive committee, and depending on the will of council, can probably be dealt with very quickly because they've already been discussed at length. And in addition, I would say that about the bylaws yet to be approved.
I would completely agree with you, Deputy Mayor. So at the call of the chair, I'm going to move through the schedule to ensure that there are both bylaws and some executive committee appointments that are required for some annual general meetings of certain associations. We are going to peel through some of these. And so in terms of the committee reports, we will now, just so we're all clear, we're not breaking for lunch. We're going to go through till 1:30 and complete what we can. We'll now consider item CR 21-76, Economic Development Regina Inc. EDR Board of Directors. Deputy Mayor, could you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a recommendation from Executive Committee to authorize the Executive Director, Finance and Strategy, as the city's proxy to put the name listed there for board membership in EDR. I'll need a seconder.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Findura. Any questions from members of the report? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Sir, we'll now consider 21-77 Economic Development Regina EDR Annual Submittals for 2020. Deputy Mayor, could you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Mayor. This involves approval of the audited financial statements and the annual report. Again, this was extensively discussed at Executive Committee, and I have nothing further to add. I'll need a seconder as well.
Bresciani.
Shaw.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on the matter? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. We'll now consider item CR 21-78, 2021 Citizens Appointments for Accessibility Advisory Committee, the Board of Revision, the Regina Airport Authority, and the Regina Appeal Board. Deputy Mayor, could you introduce the report?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a list of names attached to various committees that were carefully considered by the Executive Committee. On behalf of the Executive Committee, I put them before Council, and a seconder will be required.
Findura.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Any comments or questions? Any opposed? Carried. One moment, please. Thank you. Just to ensure we get matters dealt with that need to be dealt with and without knowing what particular issues are going to garner commentary or questions, we are going to go to bylaws and related reports, considering item CR 21-81. Deputy Mayor, that's the Executive Committee with regard to the Regina Property Tax Bylaw 2021 and the School Division Property Tax Bylaw 2021. It's near just before the bylaws near the end.
CR 21-81, the Executive Committee, Regina Property Tax Bylaw and School Division Bylaw. The recommendation is that the City Solicitor be prepared the necessary property tax bylaws for consideration by Council. And this is the bylaws that include the all of the mill rates that we've approved, together with all of the mill rates that have been approved as set out in the appendix.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Lacey, would you wish to speak to your report?
Yes, thank you, through Mayor Masters. So this is just a reflection of previous approvals Council has made on various mill rates related to the 2021 property tax, so the municipal mill rate, the levy with respect to the two bids, the library mill levy as well, which have been previously approved by Council, as well as recognition of the education property tax mill rate, which is approved and set by the province of Saskatchewan. So this report basically brings those together and seeking Council authorization then to move to putting an appropriate bylaw in place that will result in these mill rates being on the 2021 tax notices.
Thank you, Mr. Lacey. Can I get a seconder on this one?
Stadnichuk.
Thank you, Councillor Stadnichuk. Are there any questions from members on this report? Hearing none. I'm going to need a recorded vote on this one.
Thank you. I'll begin with Councillor Hawkins, please.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Councillor Mole has left the meeting. Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Carries 10-0, Mayor.
Thank you. We are going to consider bylaws number 2021-26, 2021-27, 2021-28, and 2021-35. And I'll now turn it over to the Deputy Mayor Hawkins to do the first reading for the bylaws.
Thank you, Mayor. I move, seconded by Councillor Zakidniak, the bylaws 2021-26, 27, 28, and 35 be introduced and read a first time.
Any opposed? Carried.
Mayor, can I understand, I missed who left the meeting. Perhaps the clerk can advise me on that.
Oh, I apologize. Councillor Mole has left the meeting.
Thank you very much. So I'll move, seconded by Councillor Mancinelli, the bylaws 2021-26, 27, 28, and 35 be read a second time.
Do any members of council have any questions? Any opposed? Carried.
I move, seconded by Councillor Stevens. I'd ask the clerk to note that Stevens, that council hereby consents to bylaws 2021, 26, 27, 28, and 35 going to third reading at this meeting.
Thank you. Are there any opposed? Carried.
Thank you. I move, seconded by Councillor Stadnichuk, that bylaws 2021-26, 27, 28, 35 be read a third time.
Thank you very much. Are there any opposed? Hearing none, carried. Give me a moment to convene with the clerk.
Madam Mayor, not wishing to preempt anyone, and subject to what the clerk says, I believe CR 21-79 and CR 21-80 from the Office Committee can be dealt with fairly quickly.
Thank you. That's where I was going with this one. So we're going to go to, oh, one moment, please. Sorry, I apologize. Yeah. Okay, so we do have a communication on item CR 21-79, Winter City Strategy Motion Response from Tim Reed, representing the Regina Exhibition Association Limited. Can I have someone move a motion to receive and file communication CP 21-24?
Bresciani.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Can I have a seconder?
Hawkins.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Carried. So we'll now consider item CR 21-79, Winter City Strategy Motion Response. Councillor Hawkins, can you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Mayor. We dealt with this extensively at Executive Committee. This puts the vision, the themes, and the goals before Council. It approves $50,000 to be used by the Community Investment from the Community Investment Grants Reserve to fund 2021 Winter Grant. And it approves funding of $390,000 to $420,000 to be included in the 2022 operating budget. The administration will provide an update related to measures of success and so on. I just want to say two things in connection with this. I know that Councillor Bresciani has worked hard on this and championed it, and I want to acknowledge that contribution, important as it is. And secondly, when the presentations were made, emphasis was placed by the organizing committee on the mentorship role that's being provided for women who are involved in this undertaking, an important mentorship role. And secondly, the efforts that have been made to involve particularly Indigenous young people. So with those, I'd like to move recommendation and ask for a seconder.
I'll second that, Bresciani.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Councillor Zakidniak, you wish to speak to the report?
That's right. Yeah, I just have one quick question from administration. There was some talk when this was at the Operations and Community Services Committee regarding extending the outdoor ice season. Can you please, I actually need a reminder of what was said about that, whether that would be possible this year or when we were looking at doing that.
Through you, Mayor Masters, I might ask Ms. Shaley to go through the details of that specific issue.
Through you, Mayor Masters. So the outdoor ice program currently runs for roughly 9 weeks, from right around Christmas until after the week that children and youth are out of school for the Family Day week in February. With the recommendations in this plan, we are requesting $50,000 to be able to extend the season. Of course, it is weather dependent. So that would mean that with the funding, we'd be able to either add a few weeks to the beginning of the season if the weather is colder earlier, or to the end of the season. So we'll have some flexibility regarding that, and we'll make the decisions on an annual basis depending on weather. And so that funding is proposed to be in place through the next budget cycle.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Zakidniak. Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you. I'll keep it very, very short. I just want to say thank you to the staff and all the work that they've done in getting this together. And at the end of the day, really, this is really to bring opportunity to leverage our city in the winter for many opportunities around the recreation, but also the economy. And I think it's going to improve our quality of life. So it's going to give families and everyone an opportunity to get out in the winter and look at and have different options. And then I know we are also working on a Winter City Festival, which will be more information to come. So I just want to say thank you to this was also as previous council, and thank you for supporting it today. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the vote.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll begin with Councillor Hawkins, please.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Carries 10-0, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll now consider item CR 21-80, single-use plastics. Deputy Mayor, could you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, this is an item that was discussed extensively at Executive Committee. This involves the approved waste reduction and division of initiatives contained in the waste plan. I might ask, through you, Madam Chair, the administration, Mr. Onright, to comment very briefly on this, noting that this does not affect the single-use plastic bag ban, which is scheduled for educational purposes in the last quarter of this year and for implementation in the first quarter of 2022, subject to the end of the pandemic, as we all hope.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Mr. Onright.
Through you, Mayor Masters. Councillor is correct. This does not impact the plastic bag bylaw change that will come into effect. We are monitoring the pandemic as everybody else is, but we will not go out until that part is under control. There's an education piece and communication that will go out. We are anticipating that in Q4 with implementation of the actual bylaw in Q1 of 2022. Recommendations in the report to approve option number 1, which continues to implement the council-approved waste reduction and diversion initiatives outlined in Waste Plan Regina, and we will be following and have been following the changes coming through the federal government, which we expect on the banning of certain single-use plastics. We are following that, and we anticipate that happening early this fall, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Onright. Councillor Zakidniak.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to keep this brief. I do need some clarification on a question that was asked at the Operations and Community Services Committee. I believe there was an error stated that paper bags are not currently recyclable. And so I just wanted administration to clarify. My understanding is that they are. So I just wanted that on the record. If we could have some clarification there, please, through the chair.
Through you, Mayor Masters, I'll ask Mr. Doney to comment.
Through you, Mayor Masters, that is correct. So paper bags are recyclable through our big blue bin and our curbside blue bin program.
Okay, thank you. For my next point, just for the environmental impact section, I just suggest that that section in this report could be improved by not simply by having a bit more of a robust discussion, not simply about greenhouse gas emissions and the other environmental impacts of single-use plastics. So that's just a suggestion for administration. I don't know if the response is needed. I'm just making a suggestion there.
Thank you, Councillor Zakiniak. Before you continue, can I ask for a seconder on the motion on the floor, please?
Can I second it?
Absolutely. There you go. Keep going.
Okay. And then my last thing is simply that I actually have an amendment. It's a fairly straightforward amendment. I sent it already to Amber. And so it is simply to add a point that says that if the federal government doesn't roll out their ban on single-use plastics by the end of 2021, that City Council revisit this report and the options it contains in Q1 of 2022. So this is simply because we cannot be certain of what will happen with the federal government. So I just want it to be sure that if the ban that we expect on single-use plastics does not occur, that we will have a chance to revisit this report. The work's already done. I'd just like it to come back to Council for discussion at that time if what we're expecting to occur does not happen.
Through you, Mayor Masters, administration is fine with that change.
Thank you, Councillor Zakiniak. We need a seconder for your motion.
Well, it's an amendment to my motion. I'll accept it as a friendly amendment.
You'll accept it as a friendly?
Yep.
I believe because you're the seconder, Councillor Zakiniak, this is kind of a shoe-in for you.
That's right. I also accept it. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the single-use plastic ban? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, please call the vote.
Thank you. I'll begin with Councillor Hawkins, please.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani. Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Councillor Stadnichuk.
Oh, shit. Now my mic's not working. What the heck?
Oh,
Councillor-
it's working.
Councillor Stadnichuk, you are live.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we just heard you.
Translations, please.
Oh, it shows that it's crossed off. Okay, I'm in favor.
Cheryl, I have to say darn it.
Darn it. Yeah, translations, please.
No.
Councillor Stadnichuk, do we have a vote?
Yes, in favor.
Yeah, we'll record that as a yes, Councillor. Councillor LeBlanc.
In favor.
Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Carries 10-0, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that leaves you MN 21-4 and MN 21-5.
Thank you. I'll now call on Councillor Lori Bresciani to read Notice of Motion MN 21-5 to provide advance notice to the general public on council and committee agendas and procedural changes.
Thank you. So it is therefore be it resolved that City Council, number 1, instruct the city solicitor to prepare amendments to the procedure bylaw number 9004 to take effect June 1st, 2021. To A, require delegations wishing to address City Council to provide a written submission outlining the contents of their specific concerns and or comments. B, require that meeting agendas and related reports are made available 2 Fridays preceding the council or committee meeting for which it was prepared. And C, have these amendments brought forward to the meeting of City Council following approval of these recommendations by City Council and to allow sufficient time for advertising the required public notice for the bylaw. And 2, direct the city clerk in consultation with members of council to include in the November 2021 report to executive committee respecting the proposed 2022 meeting calendar options to address the impacts arising from the increasing frequency, duration, and timing of council and committee meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? I apologize. You don't need one. CC, all questions and discussions are held until May 12th council meeting. Thank you. So what we have left is, there's no discussion on the motion. Thank you. So what we have left is MN 21-4, which is a motion from Councillor LeBlanc and Zakidniak. And given the time and the length of conversation this will display, we do not have the delegation waiting on the line. We let them go when it was determined that we would be calling our meeting to an end at 1:30. So I would ask for a motion to table MN 21-4 until our next council meeting.
So moved, Hawkins.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder?
Bresciani.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Anyone opposed? Thank you. Councillor Hawkins?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Seconder?
Bresciani.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Any opposed? Nobody. Thanks, folks. Enjoy some outdoors today if you can.